Chapter 2199. Chu Li sized him up. Fu Kaiwei quickly said, "Chu Li, that's enough." Shao Qi pulled down his sleeve. Sun Mingyue said, "This time? How many times can it be resurrected?" Zhao Haiyuan scoffed proudly. "As long as I die, I can resurrect no matter how many times." Chu Li smiled. "I'll have to try." Fu Kaiwei asked, "Zhao Haiyuan, is this a treasure from your sect or yours?" "Senior Sister Fu, do you want it?" Zhao Haiyuan asked. Fu Kaiwei shook her head. "I want to know how many more of these treasures there are." "I don't know." Zhao Haiyuan shook his head. "Did I get it from a fortuitous encounter or this one?" Fu Kaiwei said, "It was with the silencing light." "Yes." Zhao Haiyuan nodded. "This time, it's a treasure left behind by a virtuous senior monk who cultivated a divine power like the silencing light and resurrection? Such a miraculous creature, I'm sure it's not a nobody." Fu Kaiwei asked, "What was the senior monk's Dharma name?" "I don't know." Zhao Haiyuan shook his head. "The senior monk only left behind his treasure but not his body. He must have turned into a rainbow." Fu Kaiwei nodded. Chu Li said, "Young Master Zhao, we're even now. What do you think?" Zhao Haiyuan's fear was fleeting, but it did not escape Chu Li's observation. He knew that Zhao Haiyuan was scared out of his wits and would not cause any more trouble. Moreover, killing him twice was enough for him to take revenge. If Zhao Haiyuan wanted to take revenge, Chu Li would kill him even if it meant offending the heaven-shaking tower. It did not matter how many times he could live. However, resurrection? It was amazing. When he used the rotating wheel palm, he was turned into ashes and his soul dissipated. But resurrection? Although his soul energy was greatly reduced after resurrection and he was killed by Chu Li's god-slaying thunder sword. This resurrection? It was similar to the life and death tree. It was likely that Zhao Haiyuan's soul was stored in it. Once it dissipated, he could still recover. It was amazing. Chu Li became interested and wanted to know more about it. It might help him understand the life and death scripture better. "Even?" Zhao Haiyuan took a deep breath and slowly nodded. "Fine, let's call it even." He was a little unwilling, but when he thought of Chu Li's godly martial arts, killing him would be as easy as flipping his hand. It was indeed not a good idea to provoke him anymore. Seeking luck and avoiding calamity was the code of conduct of the heaven-shaking tower's disciples, and they could not fight based on personal feelings. But when he thought of Fu Kaiwei's favor for him, jealousy and hatred welled up in him again. Why couldn't he enter Fu Kaiwei's eyes, but only Zhong Qin fell for him? This resurrection? Can I have a look? Chu Li asked. No. Zhao Haiyuan said solemnly. Chu Li smiled. Resurrection? Could it be that it could no longer be used? No matter how powerful a treasure is, it can't be resurrected infinitely. How can I show such a treasure to others? Zhao Haiyuan shook his head and said, "Forgive this Zhao for not being able to comply. Furthermore, this Zhao is not an idle person. As long as I am prepared, I can still use my defensive power. Do you want to give it a try?" Chu Li narrowed his eyes. Zhao Haiyuan snorted. "Let's try." Fu Kaiwei said, "Forget it." Zhao Haiyuan, thank you for your silencing light. As long as Senior Sister Fu likes it, Zhao Haiyuan said in a muffled voice. When he thought of Fu Kaiwei's various actions, he really felt heartbroken, disappointed, and angry, but also a little unwilling. He even had a glimmer of hope that he might be able to get her. Fu Kaiwei said, "Forgive me for not sending you off." She saw that Chu Li still wanted to fight, so she could only chase Zhao Haiyuan away first to let Chu Li calm down. Zhao Haiyuan fist saluted and suddenly disappeared. Chu Li looked at Fu Kaiwei helplessly. Fu Kaiwei said, "You want to see resurrection? That's impossible. Just give up. No matter how many times you kill him, he will never hand it over." Chu Li said, "Miss Fu isn't tempted by such a treasure?" "It's nothing." Fu Kaiwei said, "This kind of treasure really depends on fate. You can't force it. Chu Li shook his head. His resurrection of Zhao Haiyuan? He did not desire it, he was just curious. He wanted to see how it was different from the life and death tree. He wanted to see through its secrets and understand the life and death scripture more deeply. Previously, the sky-piercing pearl allowed him to obtain the spiritual energy of the upper heaven because of the life and death scripture. The spiritual energy of the upper heaven was powerful. If he could improve the life and death scripture again, he might obtain the spiritual energy of the upper heaven, and its power would be even more shocking. Shao-Chi said, "It was too dangerous this time." Chu Li smiled. "Madam, don't worry. I won't die so easily." Shao-Chi glared at him. She did not say much in front of Fu Kaiwei and Sun Mingyue. She planned to nag him when they were alone and remind him to be careful. "Senior Sister Fu, will Zhao Haiyuan hold a grudge when he returns and take revenge on Chu Li?" Sun Mingyue asked. Shao-Chi also looked at Fu Kaiwei. Fu Kaiwei pondered for a while and shook her head. "According to my observation, Zhao Haiyuan is not a stubborn person. He may hate Chu Li, but he might not continue to take revenge. However, when the time is right, he might make a move." Chu Li said, "Looks like we should still kill him." "It's not possible now." Fu Kaiwei shook her head. "You're no match for the heaven-shaking pavilion now. If you kill Zhao Haiyuan, you'll definitely die." Chu Li raised his eyebrows. "Is the heaven-shaking pavilion that powerful?" Through Zhao Haiyuan's resurrection, he realized that he had underestimated the disciples of the heaven-shaking pavilion. "It's far more powerful than you think," Fu Kaiwei said. "Chu Li, although your martial arts is strong, you also have treasures to hide your force. If you really provoke the heaven-shaking pavilion, you won't be able to escape their eyes. They can plot against you without you knowing. If Zhao Haiyuan has these treasures, the other disciples won't lack them either." "If that's the case, isn't the heaven-shaking pavilion's strength shocking?" Chu Li frowned. "Has it become the world's #1? Fu Kaiwei shook her head. "Among the disciples of the heaven-shaking pavilion, there are people with high cultivation levels, but they are far from being as strong as the disciples of the Taihao Peak. They mostly rely on the antique study of the heaven-shaking pavilion and act according to good fortune. They won't put themselves in a desperate situation, so no matter how arrogant they look, they're still tactful. How can a tactful person cultivate martial arts to the peak?" "Makes sense." Chu Li clapped his hands and praised. "You hit the nail on the head. It was difficult for a tactful person to cultivate martial arts to the peak." This sentence was very profound. Zhao Haiyuan might seem arrogant, supercilious, and domineering, but through this incident, it could be seen that he was still tactful. This was both a strength and a weakness. "How did you offend Zhao Haiyuan?" Shao-Chi asked. "He insisted on killing you." Chu Li glanced at Fu Kaiwei. Fu Kaiwei shook her head. "He's a little obsessed." Zhao Haiyuan was getting more and more obsessed with himself. He must have wanted to kill Chu Li because of his hatred for him. He could also use this opportunity to prove the power of the silencing light. It was killing two birds with one stone. He was crazy and calm at the same time, which was very scary. Chu Li said, "Miss Fu, you have to be careful. If you can't get it, you'll destroy it." "I think Zhao Haiyuan has the same personality." Fu Kaiwei nodded slowly. "I'll be careful." Chu Li's expression suddenly changed. Shao-Chi and Sun Mingyue immediately noticed and looked at him. Chu Li's expression turned serious. He looked at Fu Kaiwei. "Zhao Haiyuan died again." "Huh!" Fu Kaiwei was surprised. Chapter 2200. With his omniscient mirror and heaven's eye, he was able to see Zhao Haiyuan's death. "Let's go and take a look," Chu Li said. He did not care about Zhao Haiyuan's life or death, but he did not want to be the scapegoat. If he blamed Zhao Haiyuan's death on him, it would be fine if he killed him, but he would not be happy if he was the scapegoat. He grabbed Shao-Chi and Sun Mingyue and disappeared. Fu Kaiwei shook her head and disappeared too. She could catch up with Shao Qi and Sun Mingyue. The four of them appeared in a dense forest. At this time, the sun had already set. The evening mist was heavy and light smoke was everywhere. A handsome young man stood beside Zhao Haiyuan, looking down at him. The sword in his hand was still stained with blood. Junior brother Lu? Fu Kaiwei was surprised. Shao Qi and Sun Mingyue fist saluted. Senior brother Lu. The handsome young man was dressed in a purple robe. His expression was dignified and solemn. He glanced at the four of them and took out a handkerchief from his sleeve. He gently wiped the blood off the long sword, and the sword returned to its sheath. Then, he fist saluted and looked at Chu Li without looking at Shao Qi and Sun Mingyue. Junior brother Lu, this is Chu Li, Fu Kaiwei said. She then said to Chu Li, this is Lu Zhongshan, a disciple of Taihao Peak. Chu Li nodded as a greeting. Lu Zhongshan looked at Fu Kaiwei. Senior sister Fu, why are you here? Why did you kill Zhao Haiyuan? Do you know how much trouble you've gotten yourself into? Fu Kaiwei frowned and said angrily. I killed him. Can't I kill a disciple of the heaven-shaking pavilion? Lu Zhongshan smiled faintly and said disapprovingly. I didn't kill him if I could. Fu Kaiwei sighed. Our relationship with the heaven-shaking pavilion has always been tense. Now that things have changed, the heaven-shaking pavilion will not forgive us and will take your life. Taihao Peak is not to be trifled with. Lu Zhongshan scoffed. Do you think we can take their lives just because they say so? Why must they kill Zhao Haiyuan? Fu Kaiwei asked. Is there a deep grudge? He asked for it. Lu Zhongshan said. He stole the fortuitous encounter from me. Fu Kaiwei looked at him in surprise. Lu Zhongshan said, Senior sister Fu, I originally saw a monastery on a mountain, but I didn't expect it to be empty. I didn't get anything. I only saw Zhao Haiyuan's shadow. He even smiled at me proudly before escaping. Who asked you to be a step too late? Fu Kaiwei sighed. Senior sister Fu, don't you feel guilty for saying that? Lu Zhongshan snappily said. Zhao Haiyuan must have calculated that I would have a fortuitous encounter, so he took a step ahead of me. He's really courting death. He did not wait for Fu Kaiwei to speak and snorted, saying, I know that the disciples of the heaven-shaking tower have this bad habit of snatching other people's fortuitous encounters, but I never thought that they would be so bold as to dare to snatch it from us. If I don't kill him, the disciples of the heaven-shaking tower will definitely take advantage of us and look down on us more and more. If this continues, it might be the heaven-shaking tower that is stronger than us. You're thinking too far ahead. Fu Kaiwei stared at him with a faint smile, the corners of her white lips curled. She knew that most of what he said was nonsense. Junior brother Lu was only angry at Zhao Haiyuan for snatching his fortuitous encounter, so he wanted to kill him. After killing him, he found an excuse and talked about righteousness. Lu Zhongshan knew that he could not hide it from Fu Kaiwei, so he said helplessly, Senior sister Fu, it's too late to say anything now. If the heaven-shaking tower really dares to come after us, we can still stand. It's their fault for snatching our fortuitous encounter first. It's useless for you to say this to me. You should talk to the peak leader. Fu Kaiwei waved her hand. She looked at Zhao Haiyuan, then at Chu Li. Chu Li sighed. Seems like resurrection? There's a limit to the number of times. If that was the case, Zhao Haiyuan's death was related to him. If he had not killed him twice, Zhao Haiyuan would have been able to escape death this time. He suddenly turned his head to look behind him. A few rays of light flashed in the void, then 6 elders slowly appeared. They were all wearing green robes, their faces were solemn, and their eyes were cold. Who killed Zhao Haiyuan? A thin old man snorted in a deep voice. Me. Lu Zhongshan raised his hand and said proudly, Are you the elders of the heaven-shaking tower? The 4 elders' eyes suddenly lit up and became colder. Who are you? The thin elder asked. Lu Zhongshan of the heaven-shaking tower. Heaven-shaking tower. The four elders' eyes changed again. The thin elder glanced at Fu Kaiwei and the other three and frowned. The four of you are also disciples of the heaven-shaking tower? That's right, Fu Kaiwei said. Fu Kaiwei. The four of you attacked together? The thin elder asked, his eyes burning like a torch. I killed Zhao Haiyuan alone. Lu Zhongshan scoffed. It has nothing to do with senior sister Fu and the others. Why would we need to work together to kill Zhao Haiyuan? Fu Kaiwei said, actually, Zhao Haiyuan wanted to do something to me. Junior brother Lu saw it and attacked out of anger. The thin elder sneered. What a joke. No matter how impulsive Zhao Haiyuan was, he would not dare to be rude to Fu Kaiwei. Fu Kaiwei was the youth champion and one of the top masters in the world. Zhao Haiyuan would not dare to do anything bad to her. Senior sister Fu. Lu Zhongshan yelled. Fu Kaiwei's words had tarnished her reputation, but it had lessened his sin. Seeing someone trying to harm a senior sister of the same sect and killing her out of anger, no matter in the eyes of the sect's elders, it was something that could be easily brushed aside and even encouraged. Even if there was a punishment, it would just be a gesture and not a heavy one. He was extremely grateful and shook his head. Senior sister Fu, you shouldn't have said this. Chuli looked at Fu Kaiwei. She was ruthless. Zhao Haiyuan died and was accused of molesting her. Although Zhao Haiyuan had bad intentions, he treated her wholeheartedly. She did not hesitate to frame him. This made Chuli afraid. Fu Kaiwei glanced at him and said faintly, Junior brother Lu saved my life. Lu Zhongshan shook his head and did not argue anymore. Otherwise, he would ruin senior sister Fu's good intentions. Chuli did not say anything. Sun Mingyue said coldly, if you can't have it, then destroy it. Is this the tyranny of a disciple of the heaven-shaking tower? As soon as she said this, the four elders frowned. They were originally sure that Fu Kaiwei was talking nonsense, but after Sun Mingyue said this, they were skeptical. Zhao Haiyuan was an elite disciple of the heaven-shaking tower. He was used to having a smooth life and always kept his word. If he wanted something, he would do anything to get it. However, Fu Kaiwei was not a woman who could get what she wanted just because she wanted it. Zhao Haiyuan must have lost his patience. His love turned into hatred, and he wanted to kill her. Under these circumstances, it was possible that he was blinded by greed. Plus, Zhao Haiyuan had many fortuitous encounters and obtained powerful treasures. It was not impossible for him to kill Fu Kaiwei. Fu Kaiwei stepped forward. If you want to kill junior brother Lu, you'll have to get past us first. Chuli turned to look behind him again. As the void twisted, another 6 elders in green appeared. Their expressions were cold and their eyes were like ice. They were the elders of the heaven-shaking tower. Chapter 2201. 10 elders surrounded Chu Li's group of 5. It was 2 against 1, and they were older with a higher cultivation level. Chu Li knew that they must have predicted this situation. Since they sent people, they must have sent someone with a higher cultivation level than them. Therefore, these elders were confident that they would win. Other than their cultivation level, they might also have treasures. Therefore, their chances of escaping were slim, so they had to take risks to win. We've been ordered to bring young Master Lu back. A skinny and short elder with a protruding mouth and cheeks like a monkey said. He had a wretched look, but his voice was calm and his expression was solemn. No one dared to underestimate him. Impossible. Fu Kaiwei shook her head. Unless they step over us. We need to give Haiyuan an explanation for his death. As for young Master Lu, we might not kill him, but we must bring him back for questioning. There's no turning back, the monkey-faced old man said in a low voice. The thin old man from before said, in my opinion, we should just kill him and save ourselves the trouble. There's no need to go through so much trouble. A debt must be paid and a life must be paid. What's there to say? The monkey-like elder glanced at him. The skinny elder smiled embarrassedly. Senior brother Ho, I won't say anything. The monkey-like elder looked at Fu Kaiwei. If that's the case, we can only take him away by force. Alright, come on. Fu Kaiwei scoffed. Lu Zhongshan said, Senior Sister Fu, I'll go with them first. He winked. Fu Kaiwei shook her head. Impossible. Junior Brother Lu, don't be naive. Sun Mingyue said, Senior Brother Lu, they're up to no good. If you go with them, they'll kill you before our people get there. Lu Zhongshan scoffed. Junior Sister Sun, I know what I'm doing. Sun Mingyue shook her head and stopped persuading him. Fu Kaiwei said, You're a senior brother, but you're not as smart as Junior Sister Sun. Let's fight. Yes. Lu Zhongshan agreed helplessly. Initially, he did not want to implicate Fu Kaiwei and the others. Although he put on the airs of a senior in front of Shao Qi and Sun Mingyue, he did not want to be looked down upon by the two stunning junior sisters. He wanted to appear heroic. The old man with a protruding mouth and monkey-like cheeks grunted. As expected of a great Empyrean peak disciple, then let's fight. Fu Kaiwei said, I never expected that all of you would know that we're disciples of Great Sky Peak. The disciples of Great Sky Peak cannot kill the disciples of our heaven-shaking pavilion. The thin old man grunted in a low voice, The world is so big, and it's not up to your Great Sky Peak to do as you please. Our heaven-shaking pavilion is not to be trifled with. Stop. Gather? Window Mulberry to prepare for credit. The 10 old men shook their heads, but they had already shot out the finger of heavenly secrets from their sleeves. Soundless and without any fluctuations, it would not raise any alarm. Chu Li's omniscient mirror was already observing them. When he saw this, he yelled, Be careful of the destiny finger. Fu Kaiwei snorted, Despicable and shameless. Her words were like the sound of a bronze bell. Even though it was just a delicate shout and a soft and velvety tone, her voice turned into an invisible force that clashed with the finger of divination, forming rays of bright light. When everyone saw the bright light, they knew where the finger force was and they could dodge it. As expected of the disciples of Great Sky Peak. The thin old man scoffed. They were already so old, yet they still carried out such a sneak attack. They were taking advantage of Fu Kaiwei and the others' misconception, thinking that at their age, they would respect their status and act honorably, and would not use the finger of heavenly secrets to sneak an attack. They did not expect them to see through it and even break it. Heroes come from the young, and these young people should not be underestimated. Chu Li did not use his ultimate skill. The sword of insensibility in the void above his head condensed into rays, and then into 10 rays, attacking the 10 old men separately. Bang 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 bang. The continuous explosions caused the 10 old men to freeze, and they took a step back. Their bodies were surrounded by balls of light, some green, some purple, and some gold. This was their chi barrier, and they were all transformed from treasures. It was not their original chi barrier. The omniscient mirror could clearly see the origin of these chi barriers, and it could not help but sigh. This heaven-shaking pavilion might as well be called the Treasury Tower. However, this was also very enviable. He didn't have to use his protective aura shield first. Once the protective power of the treasure was broken, the protective aura shield could be used again. It was no different from wearing 2 layers of armor, greatly increasing the defensive power. Chu Li continued to use the sword of insensibility. Seeing this, Shao Qi also used the sword of insensibility. Suddenly, the endless sword qi kept hitting them. The sword of indifference was extremely fast, silent, and traceless. It was really impossible to guard against it. They could only feel it when it was right next to them, and then take it head-on. Chu Li's soul energy was strong, and Shao Qi had stayed in Great Sky Peak for a period of time, so the speed of the sword of insensibility was not inferior to his. Great Sky Peak was indeed unique. However, Chu Li used the spiritual energy of the first heaven to condense the sword, so its purity and power were not comparable to Shao Qi's sword of insensibility. Even so, Shao Qi's sword of insensibility was extremely difficult to deal with, and the 10 old men were in a mess. Sun Mingyue's divine light fist had also reached its peak. With a light punch, the fist force had already reached the opponent's chest. It seemed to ignore space and distance, and directly broke through the void to reach the opponent. As soon as the fist force was released, it reached the other side. This was the peak of the divine light fist. Fu Kaiwei used a finger technique. Her 10 fingers gently stroked the strings as if she was playing an invisible song. At first glance, it seemed like she was just fiddling and did not play the zither. However, one could vaguely hear the sound. The sound was not real, but more like an illusion, but it inexplicably affected people. Chu Li felt invigorated as if the sky was raining. An endless stream of spiritual energy pierced through the air and poured into the void of his mind, making his thoughts sharper and his skills faster. He could not help but be shocked. This was a direct effect on spiritual energy. Almost everyone in the martial arts world today had not reached this level. Most of them stopped at inner energy and spiritual energy, and antique studies like the god-punishing thunder sword were rare. After all, spiritual energy was illusory and difficult to grasp, and the entry requirements were extremely high. More importantly, it was difficult to cultivate and it was difficult to build confidence. Therefore, it was rare to cultivate this kind of power in the world. Chu Li did not expect Fu Kaiwei to be proficient in such a wonderful technique. They were in high spirits, and their moves were exquisite and strangely fast. However, the 10 people seemed to be in low spirits, as if there was an invisible force constantly interfering. They felt uncomfortable, and their bodies were uncomfortable. Their moves did not feel smooth either. Fu Kaiwei's forehead was dripping with a layer of sweat, and it was glowing slightly. Seeing this, Chu Li knew that her wonderful technique was extremely exhausting, and she could not hold on for long. Thinking of this, his sword of indifference sped up again. Bam 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 bam. Amidst the continuous muffled sounds, the light around the 4 elders who were fighting against him flashed, and it became more and more intense. Finally, the purple light of one of the elders dissipated, and white light appeared around his body. The white light was hazy like the moon. Chu Li's god-punishing thunder sword fiercely stabbed. A blue light flashed in his eyes, and the elder who was glowing in white flew out. He spat out a mouthful of blood in midair, and then fell limply to the ground, unconscious. Chapter 2202. Chu Li smiled. Come on. The 9 elders immediately abandoned Fu Kaiwei and the other 3 and pounced at Chu Li. Finger and palm energies flew at the same time. One of the elders crushed a jade pendant and a stream of light shot at Chu Li. Chu Li's figure suddenly flashed and appeared 10 meters away, avoiding the stream of light and the elder's finger and palm energies. Humph, still trying to run. Amidst the cold laughter, Chu Li suddenly felt an invisible force surrounding him. The void seemed to have solidified, and he could no longer move freely. Let's see where you can run to. Amidst the cold laughter, they took out their treasures. Some were jade pendants, some were iron tags, some were small swords, and some were small bottles. They used their treasures one after another. However, these treasures were aimed at Fu Kaiwei and the others. Bang 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 bang. Fu Kaiwei and the others were about to help Chu Li, but did not expect them to suddenly turn around. They were caught off guard, and the power of these treasures was so shocking that they instantly fell. Fu Kaiwei fell limply to the ground while Lu Zhongshan and Shao Qi were sent flying. Sun Mingyue took a step back and supported Fu Kaiwei. The palm and finger energies of the 9 elders were shot at Fu Kaiwei. Chu Li's body floated as he used the flying demon technique. Without breaking the void, he achieved the effect of breaking the void with his body movement technique. He almost instantly appeared beside Fu Kaiwei and Sun Mingyue and pulled them 10 meters away from the range of their palm and finger energies. Sun Mingyue punched and sent an elder flying. However, compared to the 9 elders, she could not stop the momentum at all. Only Chu Li kept dodging with the two of them. While Chu Li dodged, he also activated the Sword of Indifference. Fu Kaiwei took a deep breath and her expression returned to normal. She snorted delicately and was very angry. She did not expect to be deceived by these old fellows. She had a peerless cultivation but was not able to use it. Instead, she was saved by Chu Li. While she valued Chu Li more, she was also dissatisfied with herself. She turned her anger into strength and immediately struck with her palm. Her palm was like a blade, and a strange blade intent swept across the sky. 4 of the 9 elders stepped forward as if they were facing a formidable enemy and crushed the jade pendants in their hands at the same time. Bang 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 bang! The invisible saber intent sent the 4 elders flying. In the air, their protective treasures were all shattered. Only the white light protecting their bodies was barely able to block the saber intent. A chill ran down Chu Li's spine. The might of this saber strike was truly astonishing. It posed a great threat to him. Not only did it strike at his body, but it also struck at his soul. As he gained a better understanding of Fu Kaiwei, he knew the characteristics of her martial arts. She had both form and spirit, which was no different from his own, but was a level higher. That was because, even though he had a strong soul, he did not know how to use it. Fu Kaiwei, on the other hand, had enough martial arts to transform the power of the soul into a powerful force. Chu Li's god-slaying thunder sword shot out 2 more times. Pung pung! The 2 old men flew into the air and fell unconscious. Fu Kaiwei showed a look of approval. While the 4 elders blocked Fu Kaiwei's sword intent, the other 5 elders shot toward Lu Zhongshan and Shao Qi. Shao Qi shot out several Sword of Oblivion to protect herself. She was not anxious. Lu Zhongshan, on the other hand, did not care about his own safety. He would rather be injured than to dodge. He caught an elder and wanted to knock him down. His stance was like a desperate man. Instead, he managed to stop the disadvantageous situation and was able to defend against the 5 of them. Fu Kaiwei slashed again. This time, it was aimed at the other 5 elders. As for the remaining 2 elders, they were knocked unconscious by Chu Li's god-slaying thunder sword, so they were not a concern. Chu Li suddenly turned his head to look and his face darkened. The void twisted and the 10 elders in green appeared again. As soon as they appeared, they immediately shot out the Destiny Finger energy, which instantly engulfed Shao Qi and Lu Zhongshan. The 2 of them tried their best to resist but failed. They were sent flying and blood spurted out from their mouth. Sun Mingyue each threw a punch and the 2 of them sped up in the air to avoid the second Destiny Finger energy. After Fu Kaiwei slashed out, the 5 elders quickly crushed their jade pendants to activate their protective energy. Under the saber intent, they did not think of dodging but to face it head-on. Chu Li took the opportunity to use the god-slaying thunder sword. Seeing that Shao Qi was injured, the power of the god-slaying thunder sword increased greatly. The 3 elders instantly fainted, leaving only 2 elders in the original group. Unfortunately, these 10 elders arrived and surrounded him once again. Chu Li shook his head. Looks like I'll have to risk my life. The spiritual energy from the upper heaven was divided into 3 parts under his control. They were Shao Qi, Sun Mingyue, and Fu Kaiwei. As for Lu Zhongshan, he did not meddle because they were not familiar with each other. It was difficult for him to accept the spiritual energy he gave without caution. Fu Kaiwei's saber intent always used all the strength in her body. After Chu Li's spiritual energy entered her body, she recovered in the blink of an eye and slashed again. With the spiritual energy entering her body, Shao Qi's injuries recovered in the blink of an eye. Sun Mingyue's body was overflowing with inner energy. She unleashed Divine Light Fist after Divine Light Fist with shocking power. The 10 elders who surrounded them activated their protective treasures. Hey! The 2 old men suddenly crushed an iron ball. Suddenly 2 strange forces shot toward Fu Kaiwei. Fu Kaiwei swung her saber to meet them. She only managed to break one of the forces while the other hit her. She was instantly sent flying and spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. Her face was as white as a sheet. Chu Li's expression changed. The two forces were so overbearing that they were only slightly weaker than the silencing light. He estimated that he would be seriously injured if he collided with them. Senior Sister Fu. Lu Zhongshan hurriedly asked, "Are you okay?" Fu Kaiwei staggered after landing and tried her best to stand. "I'm fine, don't be distracted." Lu Zhongshan roared, "I'm going to fight." A clear light shot out from his body. His body movement technique was so fast that it was hard to see his shadow. He crashed into an elder and sent him flying. Then, he crashed into another elder. The remaining elders did not care about Chu Li and the others. They all attacked Lu Zhongshan with their palms and fists. "Junior brother Lu." Fu Kaiwei frowned. Sun Mingyue explained, "This is our Taihao Peak's secret technique. It burns one's lifespan and can only be used for 15 minutes. Xiao Qi sighed. "Senior brother Lu is risking his life." Fu Kaiwei shouted, "Junior brother Lu, stop." Her figure suddenly flashed and appeared next to Lu Zhongshan, and her jade-like palm lightly patted his forehead. Bang! Lu Zhongshan swayed and stopped. The clear light on his body dissipated. He shook his head helplessly. "Senior sister, what are you doing? We can only fight with our lives now." The palm directly interrupted his secret technique. "What's the rush?" Fu Kaiwei scoffed. At that moment, the void around them twisted and 10 elders appeared. These 10 elders wore white robes and looked calm. They took a step forward and split into 2 groups. 4 of them surrounded Fu Kaiwei and Lu Zhongshan while 6 surrounded Chu Li, Xiao Qi, and Sun Mingyue. Chu Li let out a long sigh of relief. The green-robed elders who were about to rush over stopped. Their faces were pale. One of the white-robed elders said, "Brother Zheng, how have you been?" "Xia, I didn't expect you to leave the mountain too." A kind-looking green-robed elder scoffed. He shook his head. Taihao Peak is indeed shameless. Chapter 2203. If that's the case, Taihao Peak is determined to protect the murderer? The round-faced elder in green scoffed. "No matter what we say, it's useless. I was ordered to bring them back. As for other matters, we'll talk about it later," the white-robed elder said. The Peak Master received Fu Kaiwei's request for help, so he sent them over to rescue them. He glanced at Zhao Haiyuan's corpse and shook his head. He immediately guessed that Zhao Haiyuan was killed by a Taihao Peak disciple. It did not matter if it was Fu Kaiwei or someone else. He was going to bring them back to Taihao Peak safely. He had not just arrived and had been watching the battle for a while. He saw Fu Kaiwei's prowess and Chu Li's help. Without Chu Li, Fu Kaiwei would not have been able to hold on alone. "Taihao Peak, how domineering!" The round-faced elder in green said coldly, "If that's the case, we'll demand justice from Taihao Peak face to face. Let's clarify the situation first. I'm afraid you don't know what happened, right?" The white-robed elder shook his head and said, "Then we won't send you off. Bury Zhao Haiyuan well, it's a pity," he said with a sympathetic look, shaking his head and sighing. This made the green-robed elders on the opposite side furious and wanted to attack. The white-robed elder turned and looked at Fu Kaiwei. "Kaiwei, are you okay?" Thank goodness Masters Junior Xia came in time. Fu Kaiwei's face was pale, but she smiled and said, "Otherwise, we'll be in trouble." Xia Ding laughed. "With your abilities, it's not a problem to fight against a few old men. Let's go back to the peak," he said as he looked at Chu Li. Chu Li fist saluted and nodded with a smile. "I'm Chu Li. Young Master Chu, come with us lest those old men plot against you." Xia Ding smiled. Chu Li nodded, "Thank you." Everyone disappeared. The next moment, Chu Li appeared in an empty field. It was an empty martial arts field with a radius of about a mile. Opposite it was a majestic basilica, like a giant beast overlooking the martial arts field. Standing on this martial arts field, one would feel as small as an ant. There was only this basilica around the martial arts field, and the other three sides were empty. Through the observation of the omniscient mirror, he realized that the martial arts field he was in was floating in the air, just like the floating mountain from before. The basilica and the martial arts field were suspended in the air. Within the observation range of the omniscient mirror, there was nothing at all. It was as if the huge martial arts field and basilica were everything. Chu was surprised. Could this basilica and martial arts field be Taihao Peak? Xia Ding and the others had already left. The five of them stood in the middle of the training field, not moving an inch. Chu looked at Xiaoqi. Xiaoqi said in a low voice, "This is the suspended temple. It's the place that's in charge of punishments in the peak. Be careful." Chu asked, "What happened?" Xiaoqi said softly, "Every time we return from the mountain, we have to come here first." Chu could feel the strict rules of Taihao Peak. Fu Kaiwei, Lu Zhongshan, Xiaoqi, Sun Mingyue entered the palace. A melodious voice was heard from afar. The four of them slowly walked forward and entered the main hall. Chu stayed there alone and looked at the martial arts field. The ground felt hard with a hint of softness, and it was unusually dry. It was not slippery, so it could be used to its maximum extent. The weapons on the weapon racks were all shining brightly. They were not ordinary weapons, which showed how luxurious Taihao Peak was. After a while, Fu Kaiwei and the other three left the basilica and slowly walked toward Chu. Chu looked at Xiaoqi. Xiaoqi shook her head. "Senior sister Fu and senior brother Lu have been punished." Fu Kaiwei said, "I want to go to the foreign battlefield." Lu Zhongshan scoffed. "I want to face the wall." Xiaoqi said, "Senior sister Fu was supposed to face the wall for 10 years. She'll have to kill 100 great Azuras to offset her punishment with her battle achievements from the foreign battlefield." Chu frowned. "That's too dangerous. Great Azuras were not that easy to kill." He had experienced it firsthand. Even if Fu Kaiwei had a profound cultivation base and could easily kill 1 or 2 great Azuras, once she killed 2 great Azuras, the rest of the Azuras would find her and kill her in one go. If more than 10 great Azuras or more than 20 or 30 great Azuras surrounded her, she would not be able to defend herself no matter how strong she was. Fu Kaiwei said, "I also need to sharpen my skills. It's difficult to unleash my full potential through cultivation alone. I need to sharpen myself between life and death. Moreover, I can't wait for 10 years. Which one of you is young Master Chu?" A tall and slender middle-aged man slowly walked over. He crossed 100 meters with each step and arrived in front of Chu in a few steps. Chu gave a fist salute. "I'm Chu." The tall man smiled. "Taihao Peak is indebted to you for helping us in times of danger. I'll give you 3 days in the Sutra Library, young Master Chu." Chu was surprised. Xiaoqi quickly said, "You can enter the Sutra Library for 3 days. You can browse and cultivate the martial arts in the Sutra Library." Chu asked, "Isn't this too expensive?" "The Sutra Library doesn't contain the martial arts of Taihao Peak. They're all martial arts that Taihao Peak has collected from other places," Sun Mingyue said. "Therefore, even though there are mystical techniques in there, their power can't compare to the martial arts of Taihao Peak." Chu smiled. "This is generous enough." The tall man smiled. "Let Xiaoqi and the others bring you there." Chu said, "Thank you, senior. This is what you deserve, young Master Chu. You're welcome." The tall man took out a wooden tag from his inner pocket and handed it to Chu. After Chu took it, he turned around and strode into the basilica. Chu looked at the wooden tag and said with a smile, "Taihao Peak is really generous. The Sutra Library is useless to you." Fu Kaiwei shook her head. "You can't change to another heart technique." Chu said, "I can use other resources to improve myself. It'll be of great help to my martial arts comprehension." "That's true." Fu Kaiwei nodded. Let's go, I'll personally bring you there. Chu Li nodded and did not refuse. There must be a reason why Fu Kaiwei wanted to bring him there. Lu Zhongshan gave a fist salute to thank Chu Li and left first. He needed to face the wall immediately and could not afford to delay. Chu Li, accompanied by Shao Qi and Sun Mingyue, followed Fu Kaiwei out of the martial arts field. Fu Kaiwei looked up at the sky while changing the direction she was walking in. Finally, when they reached the edge of the empty martial arts field, she suddenly took a step forward and stepped into the void. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Fu Kaiwei stepped on the void as if she was walking on flat ground. It did not seem like she was using light body technique. Chu Li quickly followed and realized that the soles of his feet were hard to touch. It was obvious that he was stepping on something tangible. The omniscient mirror focused and found that he was in another martial arts field. He took a few steps forward and saw a towering pavilion in front of him. It seemed to be made of silver as it emitted a silver glow between heaven and earth. This is the Sutra Library. Fu Kaiwei pointed at the pavilion that was 100 meters tall. There are a total of 5 floors inside. You can enter any floor you want. However, the lower 3 floors are filled with basic martial art. There's nothing special. You can go to the upper 3 floors. Chu Li smiled. I'm going to start from the beginning. There are tens of thousands of books. You won't be able to finish reading them. Fu Kaiwei shook her head. Chapter 2204. Fu Kaiwei glanced at Chu Li and immediately understood what he was thinking. She smiled. There are many rare and strange studies here. I'm sure you'll be interested. Let's go. She quickened her pace and soon arrived at the Silver Tower. The people who passed by looked at Fu Kaiwei and bowed to her. Fu Kaiwei waved her hand and gestured for them to go about their business and not disturb others. Chu Li took out the wooden tag and handed it to Fu Kaiwei. Fu Kaiwei took it and led the 3 into the Sutra Library. Once they entered, they saw a spacious hall. There was a long table in the hall and a gentle and beautiful young lady was sitting behind it. She was quietly reading a book. People came in from time to time and put their waist tags on the shelf next to them before heading inside. Some came out and took out their waist tags before leaving the Sutra Library. Fu Kaiwei and the others approached them. The beautiful young lady looked up and smiled. Senior Sister Fu. Fu Kaiwei smiled and pointed at Chu Li. She handed her wooden tag. Taihao Peak's distinguished guest. The beautiful young lady looked at Chu Li and nodded. Welcome to Taihao Peak. Chu Li smiled. Thank you. The beautiful young lady smiled. You can come here 3 times and stay for a day each time. Chu Li nodded. Shao Qi and Sun Mingyue handed over their waist tags and followed Chu Li into the Sutra Library. They then left to choose the secret books they wanted to read. Fu Kaiwei smiled. Chu Li, feel free to read. Chu Li asked, Can I read the top floor too? Of course, Fu Kaiwei answered. There's no restriction in the Sutra Library. That's good. Chu Li nodded. Fu Kaiwei left softly. Chu Li started to read from the first floor alone. He first looked at the list of books, then gave up on some and took out some to read. He flipped through the books so quickly that others would think that he was just flipping through the books quickly. They would not be able to read the contents at all. Chu Li used the omniscient mirror to observe the books quickly. No matter how fast he flipped through the books, he could see them clearly in a flash and imprint them in his mind. However, there were all kinds of books in the Sutra Depository. Not only were there books on martial arts, but there were also all kinds of other books, such as planting flowers and raising trees, cultivating spiritual herbs, and even guidance on how to find exotic flowers and fruits, as well as how to increase the chances of encountering fortuitous encounters. As Chu Li flipped through the books, he could not help but feel amused. The secret manuals here were truly strange. They were inclusive and unique. Moreover, as he flipped through the pages quickly, he used the omniscient mirror to observe his surroundings. He noticed that the crowd was very tolerant of him. Even if he seemed to be fooling around and was not reading properly, the Tai Hao Peak disciples around him did not glare at him angrily. Instead, they treated him as normal. Chu Li shook his head. It seemed like the disciples of Tai Hao Peak were different from others, so he was not surprised at all. Shao Qi and Sun Mingyue occasionally glanced at him but did not disturb him. While Chu Li was flipping through the book, he actually had an objective in mind, which was to combine the 9 swords into one. He wanted to know how to truly combine the 9 swords into one. The 9 swords as one was a sword formation to begin with. It required 9 people to join forces and could not be used by one person. If he wanted to break this rule, he would have to pay a huge price. Until now, he had not found a way to do so. There were so many books in the sutra library, so he should be able to find a way. His hope was greatly boosted, so he flipped through the books even faster and more motivated. Unknowingly, he had flipped through the books for a day. Even when the sun had set and the sutra library had become dark, he was still flipping through the books. Fu Kaiwei walked to his side and smiled. Chu Li, you've read quite a lot, haven't you? Without looking up, Chu Li continued to flip through the books. He was racing against time. It's all right. It seems like I won't be able to finish reading in 3 days. That's right. Fu Kaiwei said, even with your current speed, you won't be able to finish reading in 3 days. That's why you have to be selective. Read through all the books first, then choose which ones to read. You won't be able to finish reading all of them in one go. Chu Li quickly flipped through the books as he spoke. Multitasking did not delay him from imprinting the contents in his mind. Is there any way to prolong the time? I want to stay for a few more days until I'm able to finish reading. Well, Fu Kaiwei pondered for a moment before she nodded. I'll think of a way. Chu Li looked up at her. Is there really a way? Fu Kaiwei smiled sweetly. There's always a way. Thank you very much. Chu Li gave a fist salute before he put the book back and took another one. Ding! A clear ring echoed throughout the sutra library. Fu Kaiwei sighed. Time's up. It's time to go. Wait a moment, Chu Li said. As he spoke, he flipped through the book again. By the time Shao Qi and Sun Mingyue came over, he had already finished reading the book. Fu Kaiwei praised, your book-swallowing technique is indeed unique. Chu Li seemed to have swallowed the book in one gulp. It was too fast. Chu Li said, I was forced to do so. If I were a disciple of Tai Hao Peak, I could have slowly read through the pages one by one. Yes. Fu Kaiwei nodded. Shao Qi and Sun Mingyue only waited at the side without urging him. Chu Li put the book back and took another one. He quickly finished reading it, but there was almost no one around. Chu Li then stood up and followed the 3 women out of the sutra library. Then, under Shao Qi's lead, they arrived at a small courtyard. It was a guest residence, and Shao Qi stayed with him. Since they were husband and wife, there was no need to avoid suspicion. Chu Li hugged Shao Qi as they lay on the bed. After the first break, Shao Qi became more beautiful and refined as if she did not belong to this world. Do you know about second eldest sister? Chu Li hugged her soft body and sighed. Suan has ascended and passed the throne to second eldest sister. Second eldest sister has become the empress. Shao Qi looked up at him in shock. The quilt slid down, revealing her fair shoulders. She was shocked. The empress? Chu Li nodded and smiled. She's the Ji dynasty's empress now. That's impossible, right? Shao Qi frowned. How can the Ji dynasty recognize a woman as the empress? She understood the Ji dynasty's customs. Men were superior to women. No matter how strong a woman was, it was impossible for her to be the empress. This had never happened before. Chu Li said, she's already the empress. They can't rebel, right? It's very likely. Shao Qi sighed. She frowned and looked slightly worried. She sighed. If they rebel, it'll be a disaster for the people. I don't know how many innocent people will die. Chu Li patted her shoulder and caressed it. You're taking it too seriously. It's impossible for them to rebel. Shao Qi looked at him. Chu Li said, don't forget second eldest sister's identity. She's the daughter of the High Duke's public house. Shao Qi was stunned. She nodded thoughtfully as she understood what Chu Li meant. The 12 High Dukes' public houses were the pillars of the country. As long as the 12 High Dukes' public houses were stable, the country's fate would be smooth. If one could win the support of the 12 High Dukes' public houses, they would not be able to stir up trouble and the throne would be as stable as a rock. Chu Li said, moreover, she has another identity. She's the Empress Dowager. Sigh. I hope second eldest sister can sit on the throne. Shao Qi sighed. But this suits second eldest sister's taste. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Chapter 2205. The next day, after both of them woke up, Chu Li went to the sutra library alone. He was already used to it and did not need anyone to accompany him. The beautiful young lady who was sitting in the main hall of the sutra library smiled and nodded at him in a friendly manner. Chu Li smiled and passed the wooden tag to her. The beautiful young lady smiled and said, "Thank you for saving my big brother." Chu Li was startled and immediately knew that she was talking about Lu Zhongshan. He smiled and shook his head. "It's nothing. My big brother is reckless and always causes trouble. He almost lost his life this time." The beautiful young lady sighed. "If it wasn't for you and senior sister Fu's help, I'm afraid he would have died in the hands of the heaven-shaking pavilion." Chu Li said, "Brother Lu is a straightforward person and doesn't care about trifles. I like him a lot." He was not lying. Although Lu Zhongshan was immature, he was clear in his actions and was indeed a good person to be friends with. However, they had only known each other for a short time and it felt like they were not from the same generation, so it was difficult for them to feel like old friends at first sight. The beautiful young lady sighed. "Fortunately, my big brother was punished. At least his temper has been tempered." Chu Li smiled but did not say anything. The beautiful young lady continued, "What kind of secret manual are you looking for, young Master Chu? What problem do you want to solve?" Chu Li immediately understood what she meant. He pondered for a while and did not hide anything. He told her about the problem he encountered. He did not talk about the treasure sword, but only said that he wanted a sword array that could hold 9 people at once. Holding 9 people at once. The beautiful young lady pondered for a while and said, "It's almost impossible, but there's always a glimmer of hope. There's a flying star technique at the top level. You can try it." Chu Li instantly smiled. The beautiful lady hurriedly said, "Young Master Chu, I'll say this first. This flying star incantation is incomplete, no one dares to practice it. They only use it to study it and enrich their own ideas. As for practicing it, it's very rare because it's a completely different cultivation system, and it has a very high requirement for talent. There have been seniors who tried to practice it, but none of them were able to achieve anything. The star power they cultivated was about the same as inner energy, at most a little purer and a little colder than inner energy. Compared to the difficulty of practicing it, this is nothing." Chu Li nodded as if he understood something. The beautiful girl hurriedly said, "Moreover, it's only a fragment. It only has the first 3 layers of the mental cultivation method, and there's no mental cultivation method at all in the later parts. It's already extinct. It seems to have been the ultimate art of the Flying Star sect, but the Flying Star sect has long been destroyed." Chu Li smiled. "Thank you, Miss Lu. I'll take a look first." The beautiful girl, Lu Shilian, smiled sweetly and said, "Young Master Chu, just take a look and learn from it." Chu Li fist saluted and walked inside. Soon, he reached the 3rd floor and found the Flying Star technique. The bookshelves on the 3rd floor were obviously less than half of those on the 1st floor. The martial arts on the 3rd floor were all incomplete and strange. Many of them were lost martial arts, but unfortunately none of them were complete. Therefore, he could not casually cultivate it. Once he succeeded in cultivating this incomplete technique, there would be no end of trouble. The flying star technique was only a thin booklet. Chu Li quickly flipped through it and put it back. Then, he closed his eyes and began to deduce it in his mind. He sat cross-legged in the void of his mind. Strange energy flowed down from the top of his head and circulated along one of the acupuncture points in his body. Slowly, the energy increased and this acupuncture point gradually underwent a strange change. In the end, it turned into a sea of energy that was no different from his dantian. Although it was not as vast as his dantian, compared to his dantian, it was like a pond to a lake. However, Chu Li's spirit was lifted and he smiled. He suppressed his joy and continued to flip through the remaining incomplete technique. First, he swept through the secret manuals on the 3rd floor. However, although these secret manuals were incomplete, they were all profound and could be comprehended in a short period of time. Each of them required him to spend a lot of effort to comprehend, but their power was far from what he had imagined. After all of the martial arts that he had were rare studies and their levels were extremely high. Although these incomplete martial arts were profound, their levels were still low and could not compare to his martial art. Therefore, they were of little value. By the time he finished reading the 3rd floor, the next day had already ended. As soon as he left the sutra library, he kept deducing the flying star technique in his mind. Shao Qi came over to stay with Chu Li. Shao Qi asked Chu Li to think of a way to go back and see Xiao Shi. If she really could not take it anymore, he still had to help her stabilize her. Shao Qi also wanted Xiao Shi to ascend to the Grand Master's boundary and reunite with her sisters. They would be happy, but the public house had lost its pillar, so it was inevitable that there would be instability. Therefore, they could not act willfully and recklessly. They still needed second eldest sister to persevere for a few more years. Chu Li agreed without hesitation. On the 3rd day, he began to flip through the 2nd floor of the sutra library. By the time he finished reading half of it, it was already nighttime. His time had been used up and he could not enter the sutra library the next day. He felt that it was a pity, but he did not act recklessly. If he did not have any greedy thoughts, he would have to be tired of living to break into the library. He could faintly feel that there was a strong force hidden around the sutra library. If anyone wanted to break into the sutra library, these forces would definitely attack, and he was not confident that he could escape unscathed. After experiencing the silencing light, he dared not look down on the heaven-shaking tower anymore. He also dared not look down on the Taihao Peak. They definitely had the power to kill him. When he returned to the guest house, Fu Kaiwei was already waiting there. Seeing that he was in high spirits, Fu Kaiwei smiled. "How was the harvest?" Chu Li nodded. "Thanks to Miss Lu's guidance, I saw the flying star technique and finally found some clues." "Junior sister Lu." Fu Kaiwei nodded. "She is also a genius with an eidetic memory. She has read almost all the secret manuals in the sutra library. Unfortunately, her obsession with reading has delayed her cultivation and she can't leave the mountain." Chu Li smiled. "That's not a big deal. I think it suits her. She is indifferent and has Buddhist root." "That's right." Fu Kaiwei nodded. "That's why she can be in charge of the sutra library. If it were someone else with ambition, who knows what would happen? It's fate that you received junior sister Lu's guidance." Chu Li nodded. "Miss Fu, when are you going to the foreign battlefield?" 3 days later. Fu Kaiwei said. "You can go to the sutra library for another day." Chu Li was surprised. Fu Kaiwei smiled. "I used some credit to exchange for it. Unfortunately, I can only exchange for 1 day. I'll have more time to save the Taihao Peak disciples next time." Chu Li smiled. "That's only if the Taihao Peak disciples agree to save them." "That's true." Fu Kaiwei smiled. "The Taihao Peak disciples usually saved others. It was rare for them to be saved by others. It was the same even if Shao Qi and Sun Mingyue were his women." Oh right, if you cultivate the flying star technique, you must be careful. It's extremely dangerous to guide the star energy into your body, Fu Kaiwei said. It's better to borrow a protective jade pendant from junior sister Xiao or junior sister Sunday. Chu Li smiled and thanked her. Fu Kaiwei waved her hand and left. Before she left, Chu Li gave her a jade pendant. He could go there by crushing it. If she had something that she could not let the Tai Hao Peak disciples know, she could call him over. Fu Kaiwei happily accepted it and then left. Chapter 2206. The moonlight was like water, and the stars were dim. Chu Li sat on a cattail hassock in the courtyard and remained motionless while his hands formed a seal. He observed a star chart in his mind. This was somewhat similar to the heavenly star chart he had seen in the stargazing pavilion, but it was even more complicated. Just this visualization diagram could eliminate most of the cultivators. It was too difficult. Without a powerful soul force, it was impossible to visualize it. Chu Li suddenly understood why the Flying Star sect was destroyed. It was because it was too difficult, so it was hard to find a disciple. Even in a generation, there was not a single person who could enter the sect. How could such a miraculous technique not be destroyed? Tai Hao Peak was indeed the Tai Hao Peak. It was amazing that a disciple could enter the sect. He observed the star chart and remained motionless. His mind was as calm as still water. As time passed, he remained motionless like a piece of dead wood, isolated from heaven and earth. He was completely silent in a corner. The moonlight was like water, and the stars were dim. He sat from night to day. When Xiao Qi woke up, she saw that he was still sitting motionless. She did not disturb him, but stood quietly at the side to protect him so that no one would disturb him. From day to night, the moonlight was still like water, and the stars were still dim. Chu Li sat on the cattail hassock in the courtyard. His body slowly became blurred, as if he had become one with the moonlight. Xiao Qi kept her eyes open and watched Chu Li, feeling the subtle changes in his aura. She suddenly disappeared and returned after a while with a small jade pendant in her hand. The jade pendant was about half the size of her palm, perfectly round and flawless. It exuded a gentle luster under the moonlight. She gently placed the jade pendant in front of his chest without disturbing him. He was now completely integrated with the moonlight, and it was difficult to tell them apart. His body was faint, as if it had become a shadow that would disappear at any time. The star chart in Chu Li's mind suddenly lit up. It was as if a star was lit up and suddenly released a ray of light that fell on the top of his head in his mind. Xiao Qi suddenly felt something and looked up at the sky. A night star suddenly burst with an extremely bright light that seemed to overshadow the moonlight. Then, the light faded and was hidden under the moonlight again. However, it was much brighter than the other stars around it. Xiao Qi recalled the description of the flying star technique and immediately understood that someone had awakened the stars. She turned to look at Chu Li. A bright light fell from the sky and landed on Chu Li's head. Woo! A strange sound rang beside her ear. She quickly turned her head to look, but there was nothing there. She hurriedly condensed the sword of indifference and cut away the dizziness in her mind, regaining clarity. Chu Li's hands changed the madra, and a steady stream of bright light fell from the sky, as if stars were falling into his Bai Hui temple. His body became brighter and brighter, gradually becoming more transparent, as if he had turned into white jade. Under the moonlight, his face looked like it was carved out of white jade, without a trace of flesh and blood. It was unreachable. She was suddenly afraid that Chu Li would really become an emotionless object. Suddenly, Chu Li took a deep breath, and the faint sound of wind and thunder could be heard from his body. Then, the bright light falling from the sky became more rapid, like a torrential downpour. His Bai Hui seemed to have become a bottomless abyss. No matter how fast Mingguang was, it was silently devoured. His originally transparent body was restored to its original state. It was full of vitality and looked incomparably real. Xiao Qi breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that he had passed a hurdle. Woo! Chu Li opened his mouth and let out a long howl. Amidst the howl, the bright light stopped falling from the sky, and the strange phenomenon stopped abruptly. It suddenly disappeared as if it had never appeared. Chu Li slowly opened his eyes, and a white light flashed as he looked at Xiao Qi. Xiao Qi sighed. Are you all right? Chu Li smiled. I've never been better. Once again, he opened up a sea of energy in his body. It contained pure and cold star power, but it was a pity that it was incomparable to the spiritual energy of the upper level. He knew that this was because the level of the flying star technique was too low, but the flying star technique only had 3 levels, and he might not be able to catch up after the 3rd level. Therefore, there was no need to continue cultivating the flying star technique, as long as he could open up a new sea of energy. In the past, he had also cultivated other martial arts and opened up a new place to store energy, but it was different compared to the flying star technique. The sea of energy opened up by the flying star technique was no different from the dantian. It could directly be used as a source of power to directly stimulate the flow of inner energy, unlike other places to store energy, which could only store energy but not circulate it. Xiao Qi smiled. You've cultivated it? Chu Li nodded. Xiao Qi asked, Did it really work? It worked. Chu Li laughed. The path of combining the 9 swords into one is promising. That's good. Xiao Qi looked at him and said, It was dangerous just now, wasn't it? I heard from Senior Sister Fu that cultivating the flying star technique is very dangerous. It's dangerous to others, but it's nothing to me. Chu Li smiled. He had the Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture, which could suppress all unusual phenomena and protect his mind. Therefore, when the star power entered his body, the unusual phenomenon did not take away his mind, and he could successfully cross the threshold. Without the Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture, Xiao Qi's protective jade pendant and the other protective jade pendant that he borrowed work. These protective jade pendants were treasures, so the advantage of a big sect was reflected. Without such treasures, even if an ordinary person had a fortuitous encounter and obtained the flying star technique, once he cultivated it, his soul would most likely be destroyed and he would die immediately. Chu Li could not help but shake his head. No wonder the flying star technique was lost. It was difficult and dangerous to cross the threshold. Xiao Qi went forward and snuggled into his arms. Chu Li hugged her tightly and felt her trembling body. He knew that she was extremely worried and felt guilty. Even if you can combine the 9 swords into one, you're not invincible. Xiao Qi said softly, I've heard about Song Wuji's power. He's the embodiment of thunder energy. I know you're least afraid of thunder energy, but you must be careful when you encounter him. Chu Li hugged her and nodded. For the next few days, Chu Li stayed at Great Dawn Peak. Great Dawn Peak had a rich spiritual energy and seemed to be closer to the sky, so it was easier to cultivate the flying star technique. He left Great Dawn Peak once and returned to Drizzle City. After cultivating the flying star technique, he immediately understood the wonders of Great Dawn Peak. He immediately returned to the Great Dawn Peak. Cultivating the flying star incantation on the Great Dawn Peak was several times faster than when he was in Drizzle City, and it was also several times more effortless. He suddenly realized that this Great Dawn Peak itself might be formed from a treasure. Without Xiao Qi's guidance, even if Chu Li had been to Great Hao Peak before, he would not have been able to re-enter Great Hao Peak. The omniscient mirror would not have been able to detect its location either. Only the waist tag of Great Hao Peak could sense it. He cleared 5 acupuncture points in one go and formed an energy sea. After the 5 energy seas were condensed, he tried to cultivate 5 sword technique. He condensed the sword energy from each sword technique into his energy sea without interfering with each other. Then, when he performed them, they did not need to go through the meridians. Instead, they shot directly from the energy sea into the swords, allowing him to control the 5-sword. This was also the wonder of the flying star technique. After reaching the second level, the star energy did not need to go through the meridians and could directly enter the energy sea. It could also fly out of the energy sea and get rid of the body's restraint. If it was not for the fact that the flying star technique was incomplete, he really wanted to cultivate it further to see how powerful it was. However, after the 5 energy seas were condensed, he encountered difficulties as he could not open the 6th acupuncture point. Chapter 2207. Chu Li had cultivated the flying star technique for several days, but had no choice but to give up. He had found the reason. The flying star technique only had the first 3 levels and could only open 5 acupoints at most to condense 5 energy seas. If he wanted to condense more energy seas, he had to advance to the next level. Unfortunately, there was no more. It was as if he was halfway up a mountain and could already see the peak. He was full of motivation to continue climbing and enjoy the scenery of the peak in one go, but he suddenly realized that the path had disappeared. He could only look but not walk over. In the early morning, invisible rays of light fell on top of his head. It was not visible from the outside, but the star power was absorbed into his 5 energy seas. It was pure and cold. His body seemed to have merged with this star, and his soul seemed to have flown up, looking down at the earth like a star. However, this strange feeling disappeared in a flash. Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture circulated and quickly suppressed it so that it would not disturb his mind. Knock knock. There was a soft knock on the door. Chu Li took a step forward and opened the door. A young man in purple stood outside the door. His handsome face was unruly and his eyes were impudent. Chu Li was good at reading people. He could tell at a glance that this person was a playboy who did not care about the rules of the world. He did not care about etiquette and did whatever he wanted. If such a person appeared in Taihao Peak, it meant trouble. He smiled and quietly sized up the young man in purple. The young man in purple also impudently sized him up and down, left and right, looking carefully. "I'm Zhou Xuanguang." The young man in purple gave a fist salute and smiled. "I heard that Taihao Peak has a distinguished guest, so I came to visit." "Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you." Chu Li nodded and smiled. "Nice to meet you, please come in." Zhou Xuanguang walked into the courtyard with his hands behind his back and laughed. "Senior Sister Fu praised you very much. She said that you're far more talented than any disciple in Taihao Peak." Chu Li laughed. "Didn't Miss Fu put me on a pedestal?" "Senior Sister Fu never lies." Zhou Xuanguang's face suddenly darkened. Senior Sister Fu was the youth champion. She was proud and would not lie. Chu Li smiled. "You won't lie?" As he saw, Fu Kaiwei didn't even blink when she lied, and she didn't hesitate to catch him off guard. Her ability to deceive people was very brilliant. Zhou Xuanguang snorted. "Senior Sister Fu thinks so highly of you, but you don't appreciate it?" He was extremely dissatisfied with Chu Li. From Chu Li's expression, it could be seen that he did not have much respect for Senior Sister Fu. Instead, there was a hint of mockery in his eyes. This was something that Chu Li could not tolerate. His face darkened. When Chu Li saw his expression, he knew that Fu Kaiwei was his sore spot. Chu Li shook his head to himself. Fu Kaiwei was beautiful and intelligent. Her every move and smile was incredibly charming. If he did not have Xiao Qi and Sun Mingyue, he might have fallen for her too. Zhou Xuanguang glared at him and scoffed. "Since Senior Sister Fu admires your martial arts, then I'd like to experience it for myself." Without waiting for Chu Li's reply, he struck out with his palm. Chu Li's chest was already imprinted with his palm. Bam! Chu Li took a step back unscathed. There was a sea of energy on his chest. Pure star power gushed out like it was solid. Zhou Xuanguang frowned at him and scoffed. Senior Sister Fu really didn't lie. His seemingly light palm strike was similar to a sneak attack, but it was the culmination of his palm technique. This palm strike was similar to the heaven-shaking tower's divine prophecy finger. It would not trigger the opponent's senses and was difficult to predict in advance. Moreover, it directly broke through the void without any space obstruction. It was impossible to avoid this palm strike. The only way to break it was to use the protective divine power to block it. However, his palm energy was extremely pure, so the protective divine power would not be able to block it. Unexpectedly, when it was about to hit, a force suddenly collided with it. It was as if a rock had hit the center of his palm. The palm energy stopped for a moment, then Chu Li glided away and neutralized the fatal palm strike. Great palm technique. Chu Li chuckled. What palm technique is this? Zhou Xuanguang replied, Enemy Destruction Palm. Chu Li nodded. The name was so ordinary that one would not expect it to be so powerful. You're the first to avoid the enemy destruction palm. Again. Zhou Xuanguang scoffed and attacked with his palm, instantly reaching Chu Li. Chu Li did not move with his hands behind his back, but the sword of oblivion was already stabbing forward. Bam 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 bam. The sword energy of the sword of oblivion was extremely pure. It was formed from the spiritual energy of the heavenly layer. The sword of oblivion was an antique study from the upper heaven. Combined with the spiritual energy of the upper heaven, it was no different from performing the sword of oblivion from the upper heaven. Naturally, it was extremely powerful. Zhou Xuanguang kept waving his palms and switched from offense to defense. He was suppressed by the storm-like sword energy and could not breathe. Chu Li suddenly withdrew his sword. Zhou Xuanguang quickly took a step back and let out a long sigh of relief. He glared at Chu Li. Chu Li smiled with his hands behind his back. Brother Zhou, let's stop here. Good, it's indeed powerful. Zhou Xuanguang's eyes flickered for a moment before he slowly nodded. He was thinking about his various antique studies and tried to fight against the sword of oblivion in his mind. In the end, he was defeated. He could not defeat Chu Li. This made him frustrated and resentful, but he was also slightly unconvinced. Chu Li said, Brother Zhou, your palm technique is really powerful. If it wasn't for my lack of skill, you wouldn't have been able to win. Zhou Xuanguang scoffed. The enemy destruction palm was powerful, but his skill was not pure enough, so he could not unleash its full power. Chu Li nodded. The enemy destruction palm was exquisite, but unfortunately, Zhou Xuanguang's cultivation level was not high enough. Goodbye. Zhou Xuanguang fist saluted and turned to leave. Chu Li sent him to the door with a smile. Another young man in blue stood outside. He was tall and rough like a lion. When he saw Zhou Xuanguang, he was stunned. Zhou Xuanguang saw him and shook his head. Junior brother Liu, don't ask for trouble. You're no match for him. Chu Li looked at the rough young man and smiled. Are you here to learn from me too? Senior Sister Fu said that we're no match for you. The rough young man scoffed. I'm here to learn from you. Zhou Xuanguang said, Senior Sister Fu is right. We're no match for him. Let's not embarrass ourselves. Let's go. Senior brother Zhou. The rough young man was unwilling to give up. I've lost to him. Zhou Xuanguang shook his head. I can't fight back at all. You won't stand a chance either. If you can defeat me, then you can challenge him. He turned and left, dragging the rough young man with him. The rough young man looked back at Chu Li reluctantly, but he had no choice but to leave. Through the omniscient mirror, Chu Li noticed that Zhou Xuanguang had stopped nearby. Then, Zhou Xuanguang stopped one Taihao Peak disciple after another and did not allow them to spar with him. This was to prevent them from embarrassing Taihao Peak and causing Chu Li to look down on them. Chu Li thought that Zhou Xuanguang was quite interesting. After a while, Xiaoqi arrived. Her white robe fluttered in the wind like a fairy. After she entered, she asked with a smile, Did you meet the senior brothers who came to learn from you? Chu Li smiled and told her about Zhou Xuanguang. Shao Qi shook her head. Senior sister Fu did it on purpose. She used you to provoke the others so that they won't be arrogant and think that Taihao Peak is the best in the world. Chapter 2208. Senior sister Fu has gone to the foreign battlefields. Shao Qi sighed. Junior sister Sun has gone too. Chu Li was stunned. Sun Mingyue didn't even say anything to him before leaving. It seemed like she was angry. He sighed to himself. There was nothing he could do. Shao Qi glanced at him. I'm going to the foreign battlefields too. Chu Li frowned. What's going on? I heard the situation there isn't good, Shao Qi said. The number of great Azuras has increased, and many disciples from the 9 divisions have died. But it's not up to you and Mingyue to go, right? Chu Li asked. They were disciples who had joined the peak for less than a year and had yet to cultivate advanced antique studies. How could they suddenly enter the foreign battlefields? It was too cruel, and it would damage the future of Taihao Peak. Was the situation in the foreign battlefields already so serious? Shao Qi said, Junior sister Sun and I are different from the others. Although we're new disciples, our cultivation levels aren't weak, so we can't just stand by and watch. Chu Li nodded. Shao Qi said, although it's dangerous to enter the foreign battlefields, there's also a benefit. You can obtain battle merits and some treasures that you can't usually get, such as protective jade pendants. Chu Li frowned. Alright, be careful. Shao Qi smiled and nodded. Chu Li thought for a while, then took out a pearl from his pocket and handed it to her. Shao Qi took it and asked, What's this? Space-breaking pearl. Chu Li said, We can't use void diversion in the foreign battlefields, but with this void-breaching pearl, we can use void diversion. Shao Qi knew it was useless to refuse, so she kept it. What about you? My light body technique is enough, Chu Li said. Shao Qi knew he was talking about the flying divine demon technique, so she nodded. It was not appropriate to mention it here. Try not to go to the foreign battlefields, it's too chaotic there. I'm going to look for the Flying Star sect, Chu Li said. See if I can find them. Then look for senior sister Lu, Shao Qi said. Chu Li arrived at the Sutra Library and entered the basilica. Lu Shilian was still sitting behind the lonely long table, reading a book in her hand. When she felt Chu Li standing in front of her, she raised her head and smiled sweetly. Big brother Chu, you're famous now. Chu Li could not help but laugh. It's Miss Fu's good intentions that stimulated the disciples of Taihao Peak to cultivate diligently. Miss Lu, I'd like to look for the heart technique after the Flying Star incantation. Is there any hope? The Flying Star sect has already been destroyed, Lu Shilian muttered, and it has been over 1,000 years. I'm afraid that there are no descendants left in this world. How did they go extinct? Who destroyed the Flying Star sect? Chu Li asked. Lu Shilian said, in fact, it was natural for them to perish. There was no successor, and none of their disciples could inherit the Flying Star incantation. Chu Li was puzzled. Lu Shilian looked to her left and right. Seeing that no disciples were paying attention, she said in a low voice, Actually, this has a lot to do with our great sky peak and heaven-shaking pavilion. Chu Li was deep in thought. These 2 sects snatched their disciples? That's right. Lu Shilian showed a look of approval. Chu Li had already thought of this problem when he was cultivating the Flying Star incantation. The Flying Star incantation had a very high requirement for aptitude. It was rare to become a disciple of the Flying Star sect. Disciples with such high aptitude would first join Taihao Peak, Heaven-Shaking Pavilion, and the other 9 divisions. Only the rest would be interested in the Flying Star sect. Disciples with high aptitude were also treasures that sects fought over. How could Taihao Peak and Heaven-Shaking Pavilion allow the Flying Star sect to snatch their disciples? In this case, the Flying Star sect would naturally be doomed. There's no news about the Flying Star sect at all? Chu Li frowned. They should be able to leave behind an inheritance, right? They should have, but unfortunately, a natural disaster struck. Lu Shilian shook her head. The entire Flying Star sect sank underground, along with their inheritance. No one can find them. Is it the heaven-shaking pavilion? Chu Li asked. Lu Shilian shook her head. They can't predict it either. The Flying Star sect is doomed. Chu Li asked, do you know where the Flying Star sect is located? Wait a moment. I'll get you a map, Lu Shilian said. She stood up and walked into the sutra library. Soon, she arrived in front of a bookshelf and took out a thick book. She opened it and flipped through it. Then, she brought it to the long table and pointed at a page. This is where the Flying Star sect is located. Chu Li first took a look at the thick book. The title of the book was 10 Great Sect Annihilation Mysteries of the Grandmaster Realm. Lu Shilian said, the author's knowledge is unique and refreshing. Otherwise, she wouldn't have placed it here. Chu Li nodded. Can I flip through it? He did not flip through the book at that time because he felt that it was not very useful. Now, it seemed that he had to read it carefully. Sure. Lu Shilian nodded. Chu Li opened the thick book from the beginning and quickly flipped through it. In a short while, he had finished flipping through the book. Then, he closed his eyes and found the picture in his mind. Based on the analysis of the author of this book, the Flying Star sect's annihilation was a heavenly punishment. It was done by the upper heaven. Otherwise, it would not have been completely annihilated without any warning. Even the heaven-shaking pavilion could not detect it. Otherwise, according to the heaven-shaking pavilion's usual practice, they would have given a warning in advance. He returned the book to Lu Shilian, thanked her, and did not enter again. Seeing that Chu Li was about to leave, Lu Shilian hurriedly said, Big brother Chu. Chu Li looked at her. Lu Shilian said, You have to be careful of senior brother Huang. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Lu Shilian lowered her voice and said, Senior brother Huang is the second master in our peak. He's only slightly inferior to senior sister Fu. Senior sister Fu praises you so much. Senior brother Huang must be unhappy and will definitely look for you. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Seeing that he was not bothered, Lu Shilian quickly said, Big brother Chu, you have to know that senior brother Huang has always liked senior sister Fu. If you were a woman, he wouldn't be too bothered. However, you're a man and you're from the same generation as us. Chu Li said, I have Shao Qi and Mingyu. Why would I have any improper thoughts? Since you have junior sister Shao and junior sister Sun, why can't you have one more? Lu Shilian smiled. Chu Li slowly nodded. Alright, I'll leave Taihao Peak today to visit the Flying Star sect. Lu Shilian smiled. That's for the best. Senior brother Huang is still in isolated cultivation. Seeing that Chu Li was so tactful, she admired him. With his level of cultivation and being a distinguished guest of Taihao Peak, he was not afraid of offending senior brother Huang. Instead, he took the initiative to avoid him. It was truly rare. Although the young disciples she met were highly skilled in martial arts, they were all young and full of vigor. Chu Li, on the other hand, was able to suppress his emotions. He was far more mature and steady than his peers, which was very reassuring. Chu Li bid farewell and returned to his courtyard. Just as he was about to pack his things and leave, he opened the door. A young man in a yellow shirt was already standing outside. His face was like jade, his eyes were like stars, and his eyebrows were brimming with confidence and determination. His gaze was solemn as he fist saluted. I'm Huang Yu. Are you Chu Li? Chu Li nodded. That's me. Young Master Chu, are you going to the foreign battlefield? Huang Yu asked. Chapter 2209. Chu Li saw that he came with ill intentions, so he stopped being polite. Huang Yu scoffed. You're close to junior sister Fu, right? Chu Li nodded. I've worked with Miss Fu before, so I guess we're close. If you're looking for Miss Fu, you'll have to go to the battlefield outside the boundaries. She's already there. Why was she punished to go to the battlefield outside the boundaries? Huang Yu spoke coldly, and his gaze abruptly became cold. She went to the Outerium battlefield, yet you're here as a guest. You're truly carefree. Chu Li asked, so, young Master Huang? I don't mean anything. Huang Yu sneered. I heard that junior sister Fu admires your martial arts, so I'm here to learn from you. Chu Li waved his hand. Miss Fu was just joking. Junior sister Fu never jokes about such things. Huang Yu said. Why, do you think it's beneath you to spar with me? Chu Li laughed. If that's the case, I'll keep you company. Please. Huang Yu slowly unsheathed his sword and said, I'm cultivating the sword. Be careful, the sword has no eyes. Chu Li gestured for him to make his move. Buzz! The sword light turned into a white light that expanded like thousands of pear flowers blooming in front of Chu Li. Chu Li was dazed for a moment as if he was about to enter an illusion. Then, Mahavairokkana's immobility scripture was activated. When he regained his senses, the tip of the sword was already at his chest. Chu Li's body swayed and he managed to dodge the sword. If it was not for the flying divine demon technique, he would not have been able to avoid it. He had goosebumps on his back as he was shocked. It was too dangerous earlier. Huang Yu's sword had no intention of stopping and was determined to pierce through him. He was furious but remained calm. His body flashed a few times to avoid the sword tip and activated the sword of indifference. Bam 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 bam. The sword of indifference attacked him like a storm, but he blocked it with his long sword. The sound of the sword colliding with the sword energy was like muffled thunder without a clear sound. Chu Li knew that it was because Huang Yu's sword was filled with sword energy that was extremely pure. When the sword energy collided with the sword energy, it did not affect the sword. Otherwise, the sword would not have made such a sound. Bam 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 bam. Chu Li did not give up and continued to attack. The sword energy of the sword of indifference was extremely pure. Suddenly, a faintly discernible bright light fell from the sky. If it was at night, this ray of light would be very bright, but it was not obvious during the day. The astral power entered the body of the sword and merged with the spiritual chi of the upper heaven. Then, it condensed into the sword chi of the sword of indifference. Ding! Suddenly, there was a crisp sound. The yellow jade sword was knocked away, and the figure was sent flying. Ding 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 ding. Chu Li urged the sword of indifference to become even more violent. Huang Yu waved his sword to block the attacks, but his figure kept retreating. Chu Li's sword of oblivion seemed to be endless. Huang Yu's hand gradually became numb. He was shocked as he did not expect Chu Li's cultivation level to be so profound. He became even more furious and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. Then, his sword's momentum changed abruptly and he thrust his sword forward. Wherever it passed, the divine sword of indifference would scatter and the tip of the sword would instantly reach Chu Li. Chu Li flicked his finger lightly and dodged to the side. Ding! The power of Philip's swift thunder grew stronger and stronger. Huang Yu felt his body go numb. When he wanted to move again, he was already sent flying. His body was surrounded by a blue glow. It was the protective chi barrier activated by the protective jade pendant. Chu Li did not go too far and did not chase after him. He smiled at him with his hands behind his back. Sorry for the embarrassment. Huang Yu landed on the ground with a gloomy face. He took a deep breath to suppress his raging anger. He was angry at Chu Li and himself. He had just come out of isolated cultivation and thought that he could compete with Fu Kaiwei. He did not expect to be defeated by Chu Li. Goodbye. Huang Yu turned and left. Chu Li smiled and got up to leave. When the news of Huang Yu's defeat spread, Chu Li had already left the Taihao Peak and appeared in a deep valley. This was the address he got from the 10 Great Sect Extermination Mysteries of the Outer Heavens realm. The deep valley was desolate with dense weeds and ancient trees. There were no signs of humans. Chu Li used the omniscient mirror to scan the ground. When he used the omniscient mirror to observe his surroundings, he could easily see up to 100 miles. It was more difficult to look underground. He could see up to 50 miles, which was already a terrifying depth. It was barren as far as he could see. The things underground were not like the things on the ground. The earth energy was the best at decomposing. Many relics had turned into soil and were difficult to distinguish. He used the omniscient mirror to observe the bottom of the valley, but found nothing. He frowned. Was he not here? Had he been fooled by the book? He did not give up. He continued to use the deep valley as the center and moved forward bit by bit to observe. After a day, he found nothing. It was either his position was wrong or he had sunk too deep and was out of the range of the omniscient mirror. No one could do anything about it. He was not in a hurry to stop. He continued to observe while cultivating the flying star technique. The flying star technique was a mysterious technique. If he really encountered the inheritance of the flying star sect, he should be able to sense it. He used the heavenly star insight technique to deduce his position while observing. He walked in the direction where he vaguely felt it and observed as he walked. Finally, on the evening of the 5th day, his expression changed. At this moment, he was standing on the peak of a towering mountain. He had been observing downward. When he stood on the peak of the mountain, he suddenly had an idea and looked at the mountain. He immediately discovered something. The flying star technique suddenly had a strange reaction. He followed the reaction and looked inside. He saw a jade pendant. This jade pendant was embedded in a bone. Looking at the appearance of the bone, it should be a fierce tiger. It was a bit strange that the jade pendant was on the tiger's body. It must have eaten someone, and that person's jade pendant had also entered the tiger's mouth. He did not know what this jade pendant was, but since it could sense the flying star technique, it must be something extraordinary. However, this jade pendant was located in the middle of the mountain. He could break through the void but did not have the earth escape technique. He could only dig. Thus, he waved his regal sky sword and dug inside like a mole. In the blink of an eye, a cave as tall as a person was formed. The cave kept going in. Chu Li's regal sky sword turned into a ray of light. Everywhere it passed, the soil and rocks were crushed by the light and flew out. After a while, Chu Li had to turn around and push the soil out of the cave. Although he had a divine weapon, he still spent half a day digging to the depths of the mountain and dug out that jade pendant. Although the jade pendant had been buried for so long, it was not stained by the soil. It was still clean and white, as if it was not buried in the soil but placed outside. Chu Li reached out to pick it up. However, his palm was numb. He could not reach it. Chu Li was surprised. He activated the flying star technique and filled his palm with star power. When he touched the jade pendant, the star power suddenly surged into the jade pendant. Other than his dantian, the star power from the other 5 energy seas surged into the jade pendant. The jade pendant suddenly shot out a ray of starlight and returned to normal. Its color was dimmer than before. It looked like the most ordinary jade pendant. It was not a precious treasure, so it was not worth looking at. Chapter 22:10. Just as he turned around, his expression changed. 2 young men stood in the void in front of him. One was plump and looked honest while the other was tall and handsome. He stared at Chu Li like a goshawk looking at a rabbit. Chu Li frowned as he looked at them. He felt a sense of familiarity from their aura. They were disciples of the heaven-shaking pavilion. No wonder they could hide from his senses and appear so suddenly. "Who are you?" the tall and handsome young man asked. "Did you get something just now?" Chu Li asked, "Who are you?" He wanted to leave but realized that the void around him was locked again. It was obviously the effect of a treasure. He had given his void breaching pearl to Shao Qi, so he could not leave for a while. However, he had the flying demon technique, so he was not worried. He stared at the two young men and wanted to know what was going on. He vaguely guessed that the heaven-shaking pavilion would not do anything without benefit. They could predict a major fortuitous encounter and obtain it in advance. Even if they could not predict it in advance, they would try to steal it after the fortuitous encounter. The tall and handsome young man said, "Nan Gong Jing of the heaven-shaking pavilion. Jin Shurong of the heaven-shaking pavilion." The plump young man fist saluted. Chu Li nodded. "Oh, you're a disciple of the heaven-shaking pavilion. What can I do for you?" "Who are you?" Nan Gong Jing asked. "You're not a nobody, are you?" They could not sense Chu Li's strength. The Chu Li in front of them was illusory. It seemed like he was right in front of them, but at the same time, it seemed like he did not exist. As long as they closed their eyes, they could not sense his existence. In this situation, either he had a treasure to hide his aura or his cultivation level was unfathomable. No matter which one it was not beneficial to their operation. A person with such a treasure was definitely not an ordinary person. A person with a high cultivation level was even more unlucky. Chu Li smiled. "I'm Chu Li." "You're Chu Li." The two men's expressions changed. They had naturally heard of Chu Li's name and knew his abilities well. Although Zhao Haiyuan's death was caused by Lu Zhongshan of the Taihao Peak, it was also related to Chu Li. They could not do anything to the disciples of Taihao Peak, but they were not so polite to Chu Li. The disciples of Heaven Shake Tower had received orders to not let go of Chu Li if they had the chance to. He was just a disciple of the Rain Master Palace, so there was nothing to worry about. However, they had to be careful of Chu Li's counterattack, as it would not be easy to deal with him. As soon as they heard Chu Li's name, they knew something was wrong. The two of them might not be able to deal with him, so they needed other methods. Chu Li nodded and said, "I am Chu Li. What can I do for the two of you?" "Hand over what you just obtained," Nan Gong Jing said indifferently. "We might spare your life." Chu Li smiled. "Are you planning to rob me openly? How about we make a deal?" Jin Shurong scratched his head and said somewhat embarrassedly, "We can't openly rob you. However, what you just obtained is too important to us, so we must obtain it. We can use a treasure to exchange for it." As he spoke, he took out an iron plate from his bosom and shook it a few times. This is a protective jade plate. It can emit protective aura qi. When combined with your own protective aura qi, it will be even more powerful. Chu Li shook his head and said, "It's useless." "Chu Li, don't underestimate our protective iron plate." Jin Shurong hurriedly said, "How about this, you can give it a try. Give me a palm strike." Chu Li said, "I want to give it my all." "Sure." Jin Shurong said proudly, "Let's see what you're capable of and the power of this protective iron plate." Chu Li nodded. The two of them did not come with good intentions. They were determined to rob him. Their cultivation level was not low, and more importantly, they had many treasures. In particular, they could conceal their aura and protect their mind, which happened to be able to block his omniscient mirror. His omniscient mirror was not what it used to be. With the Heaven's Eye connection, its power was even more shocking. Even if he had a treasure, he would not be able to block it. However, it was able to block it this time. It was obvious that the two of them had extraordinary treasures. Since there was no need for him to hold back, it was best to take the opportunity to injure one of them. "Come." Jin Shurong waved the iron plate. Chu Li swung his palm with a whoosh. This palm was as fast as lightning. It was condensed from star power, which was pure and mysterious. It was different from normal palm energy. He wanted to see if this protective iron plate could be used. At the same time, he had to be careful. He had already been tricked once. Zhao Haiyuan suddenly used the perishable orb and shot out the perishable ray, which was beyond his expectations. He really did not expect an elite disciple of a prestigious sect to do something like that. It changed his view of the heaven-shaking brothel. That was why he was very careful of the heaven-shaking brothel disciples to prevent them from playing any trick. Bang! Jin Shurong threw the iron plate forward. The iron plate floated in the air and coincidentally met the palm energy. A dim gray light flashed and Chu Li's palm energy disappeared without a trace. Jin Shurong waved his hand and the iron plate returned to his hand. He smiled proudly at Chu Li. How is it? Chu Li remained silent. Palm energy alone is not enough. Let's see how it defends against sword technique. Jin Shurong waved the iron plate. Come. Chu Li pulled out the Sky Killer sword. My sword technique is better, be careful. Come on, come on. Jin Shurong said impatiently. He casually waved the iron plate. With this, you definitely won't be able to break through my defense. Chu Li thrust his sword forward. It was as fast as lightning and instantly appeared in front of him. Jin Shurong waved the iron plate again. Swoosh! A gray light shot towards Chu Li. The two were only a sword's length away from each other. The gray light was extremely fast. Chu Li's body swayed to avoid the light. However, the gray light suddenly spread and formed a light. No matter how fast Chu Li was, he was still touched by it. Suddenly, a strange energy surged into his body. It was cold like ice water drilling into his body. Chu Li frowned and retreated at an extremely fast speed. Swoosh! The tall and handsome Nangong Jing pointed his finger and a ray of light fell on Chu Li. Once the chilling force entered his body, Chu Li quickly performed the sacrificial divine power. The spiritual energy of the upper level merged with the star power, which was violent and overbearing. The chilling force was quickly dissolved, and his inner energy surged like a huge wave. Seeing the light fall on Chu Li, Nangong Jing relaxed and let out a long sigh of relief. This finger energy was the accumulation of his entire cultivation level. Its power was shocking. It was fine if it did not hit, but if it did, it would definitely be heavily injured, even if it was Chu Li. Thinking that Chu Li, who was so difficult to deal with, was still injured by him, a smile appeared on his face. However, his smile quickly froze as he looked at Chu Li, who had taken the iron plate and sent Jin Shurong flying with one palm. What he hit earlier was only Chu Li's shadow. It was so realistic that he did not notice it. This was the power of the flying demon technique. Chu Li's palm heavily injured Jin Shurong. Even though Jin Shurong's protective energy barrier was activated, he still could not block the cloud-slashing palm from the sacrificial divine power. Jin Shurong spat out blood in the air and fell limply to the ground. There was a bang and then there was no sound. You killed junior brother Jin, Nangong Jing shouted. Chu Li scoffed. I won't die. Although he would not die, he was living in pain. His bones were all broken and his cultivation level was mostly destroyed. With the help of the spirit medicine, he would need at least a year and a half to recover. Nangong Jing gritted his teeth. What do I have to do to make you hand it over? Chu Li laughed. Chapter 22:11. This time, I'll really use the treasure to exchange for what you got, Nangong Jing said. Chu Li frowned. Goodbye. He turned and left as soon as he finished speaking, his body like a wisp of smoke. Do you really think you can escape? Nangong Jing carried Jin Shurong and followed him like a gust of wind. As he chased after him, she said, If you don't hand it over, you won't be able to escape even if you run to the heavenly demon realm, the boundless surpassing state, or even the endless sea. Chu Li said, Is the heaven-shaking pavilion so overbearing? The heaven-shaking pavilion is responsible for the people of the world. Such an important item cannot fall into the hands of someone with bad intentions, Nangong Jing said. It's our fault if we can't take it back. Chu Li laughed. You call yourselves the masters of the world. What a joke. We can peek into the secrets of the heavens, so of course we have to be responsible for the people of the world. Nangong Jing scoffed. Do you really want to be so stubborn and kill yourself? Chu Li said, "Whatever I get, no matter how ordinary it is, belongs to me. Of course, I won't just give it to you. Not everyone can be robbed by you. Do you know the consequences of going against the heaven-shaking pavilion?" Nangong Jing's light body technique was excellent, so he followed him closely. Chu Li's omniscient mirror could see that he had used another treasure. His light body technique and the treasure allowed him to follow him, but this was his limit. He could not go any faster. Chu Li scoffed. "So what if I'm right?" Then, he sped up and activated the sacrificial divine power. His speed increased by a few times, and he disappeared in the blink of an eye. As long as he got rid of Nangong Jing, he could use void diversion and leave instantly. It would be impossible to catch up. Bang! An explosion came from the sky. Then, Chu Li's hair stood on end. He suddenly turned and dodged to the side. Not far away from him, an invisible force spread out, but it was impossible to see anything strange. Chu Li avoided this invisible force like a snake or scorpion, so he sped up again and ran to the side. However, this formless energy was even faster than him. He was still unable to completely avoid it and was struck by the aftershock. Bang! It was as if he had been hit in the back by a heavy hammer. He looked up and spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, he fell limply to the ground, unable to move. In his mind, the little critter that had already fallen asleep lazily suddenly opened its eyes. It opened its mouth abruptly and inhaled. Immediately, the power that had yet to disperse in the surroundings gushed into his body unceasingly, and drilled into his mind. The listless little critter's spirit was roused. However, after the energy drilled into its body, it absorbed it in one gulp. After that, it returned to its lazy appearance. It lay down and closed its eyes to sleep again. Chu Li breathed a sigh of relief, but pretended to be powerless as he watched Nangong Jing approach. Nangong Jing snorted. "Now you know how powerful I am, right?" A figure appeared in the void on the other side. It was an old man with white eyebrows and beard. He shook his head and said, "Little Jing, do you really need me to deal with such a brat?" "Granduncle," Nangong Jing said. "This is Chu Li. He's not a nobody. I've been in seclusion for a few years, but I've never heard of him." The old man shook his head and said, "But no matter how powerful he is, after taking this tiger soul pill, even if he doesn't die, he will still lose a layer of skin. I'm leaving first." "Granduncle, thank you," Nangong Jing said. "This time, I don't want to hand over the item that I want to seize to the sect. I want to keep it for myself, so I can only disturb you, Granduncle." "What kind of treasure is it?" The old man's spirit was lifted. If a treasure was handed over to the heaven-shaking pavilion, the heaven-shaking pavilion would give a reward of a higher level than the treasure. Therefore, the treasures that the heaven-shaking pavilion's disciples obtained would usually be handed over to the sect and exchanged for a treasure that they fancied. However, the treasure that Nangong Jing wanted him to keep was definitely not ordinary. "It's most likely an inheritance," Nangong Jing said. "The Flying Star Sect's inheritance. If we can obtain the Flying Star Sect's inheritance, it's indeed a treasure. We can't give it to the heaven-shaking pavilion." The old man quickly nodded and said, "If our Nangong family obtains this, there's a great chance that we can rise again." Nangong Jing nodded slowly. "That's why we must obtain this treasure at all costs." Chu Li lay on the ground and listened to Nangong Jing's words. He directly read the old man's thoughts from his mind. The Nangong family that Nangong Jing came from used to be prosperous. Although they did not become a sect, they had suppressed the surrounding sects to the point that they could not lift their head. However, as the later generations became mediocre, the Nangong family gradually became ordinary. Now they were only a wealthy family. This made them extremely dissatisfied, and they all wanted to restore the glory of their ancestors. As Nangong Jing spoke, he approached Chu Li and placed the limp Jin Shurong next to him. Nangong Jing shook his head and sighed. Chu Li, why did you have to do this? If you had handed it over earlier, you wouldn't have ended up like this. Chu Li stared at him with difficulty. What do you want? Nan Gong Jing looked at him with pity. You've guessed correctly. I kill people and take their treasures. That's all. There's nothing new about it. Chu Li said, the heaven-shaking pavilion's disciples are really extraordinary. We can't deal with Taihao Peak, but do you think we can't deal with you? Nan Gong Jing scoffed. As he spoke, he unsheathed his sword and stabbed it at Chu Li's chest. Ding! Chu Li bent his finger and flicked it. The snap of thunder caused Nan Gong Jing to freeze. Before the protective chi barrier could take effect, Nan Gong Jing was hit by Chu Li's palm and all the acupuncture points on his body were sealed. Stop! The old man realized that something was wrong. He shouted and rushed over. Chu Li grabbed Nan Gong Jing and Jin Shurong and disappeared. Ah! The old man roared in anger, but he could only watch helplessly as Chu Li disappeared. Normally, he would be able to sense Nan Gong Jing. However, Nan Gong Jing's aura was concealed by the earth demonic stone as Chu Li was carrying him. The old man could not sense him. He could only panic, but he could not do anything. Chu Li dragged Nan Gong Jing and Jin Shurong to the peak of a mountain. He knew that time was precious. Since he had killed 2 of his disciples, the heaven-shaking pavilion would soon sense it and send people over. He needed to stay close to them and use the earth demonic stone to suppress their auras. He quickly took out their belongings. Chu Li smiled when he saw a few jade pendants and a few bottles of spirit medicine. The jade pendants they were holding were not ordinary jade pendants. They were not even ordinary treasures. None of them were weak, and these spirit medicine were not ordinary spirit medicine either. He had gained a lot this time. Usually, the heaven-shaking pavilion was the one who robbed others. This time, Chu Li robbed the heaven-shaking pavilion. It was really satisfying. He had completely offended them. They could forget about turning hostility into friendship. If there was a chance to teach them a lesson, he would not let it go. With a slight shake, the 2 of them woke up. Jin Shurong's eyes widened while Nan Gong Jing stared at him with a gloomy face. Chu Li smiled at Nan Gong Jing. Thank you for giving me this treasure. Chu Li, you should know the consequences of offending the heaven-shaking pavilion, Nan Gong Jing said in a low voice. Chu Li nodded. I'll definitely die, right? Then I'll go crazy before I die. Tell me, what treasure is this? What about this? There's also this? Chu Li pointed at the neatly arranged jade pendants on the ground. There were 6 of them in total. Some were big and some were small. The big ones were the size of a palm, while the small ones were only the size of a fingernail. Some were dull and lusterless while others had a warm glow. Chapter 22:12. Then, he pointed at the bottles of spirit pills and asked Nan Gong Jing what they were for. Nan Gong Jing scoffed but did not reject him. What he said was completely different from what he had in mind. He described the poison as a spirit medicine and the spirit medicine as a poison. However, some of what he said was right and some of it was fake. If it was not for the omniscient mirror, he would have been fooled. Chu Li frowned and looked at him. Young Master Nangong, since you've already lost, why don't you just admit defeat? You're shameless to play tricks like this. Who said I'm playing tricks? Nan Gong Jing scoffed. Chu Li picked up a small jade bottle and opened it. You said this is a spirit pill that can increase one's power. Fine, take it. He poured out a blood-red pill and stuffed it into Nan Gong Jing's mouth. Nan Gong Jing's face darkened. He glared at him viciously. He wanted to skin Chu Li alive. Chu Li looked at his face and shook his head. Take this spirit pill and you'll feel good. You'll be able to break through your acupuncture points soon. You don't have to waste your time now. Nan Gong Jing had been trying to break through his sealed acupuncture points. He had made some progress and had unsealed 2 acupuncture points. Chu Li did not care and pretended not to know. He pointed it out with a hint of mockery. He wanted to see Nangong Jing in pain and despair. It would be a show of strength to him, and also a show of strength to Jin Shurong. Jin Shurong's expression changed, but he did not say a word. Through Chu Li's omniscient mirror, he saw that Jin Shurong was even more cunning. He looked honest, but he was full of evil tricks. He was thinking of ways to deal with Chu Li. Chu Li poured out a spirit pill from another bottle and stuffed it into Nangong Jing's mouth. He smiled. You don't have to thank me. This spirit pill was the antidote. Nangong Jing let out a sigh of relief. He was also a person who was afraid of death. Dying after eating his own poison made him even more afraid. Even if he died, he would become a laughingstock among the disciples of the heaven-shaking pavilion. His name would be passed down from generation to generation, and he would never be able to make a comeback. His back was drenched in cold sweat. Chu Li ignored him and turned to look at Jin Shurong. He smiled and said, Master Jin, let's have a good talk. What are these? He pointed at the jade pendant and the elixir. However, Jin Shurong was straightforward and did not hesitate to tell the truth. In fact, he was also frightened by Chu Li. If senior brother Nangong had really been poisoned to death, that would have been a great humiliation. He would have probably been poisoned to death as well. Although the treasures were great and the spirit pills were wonderful, they were not worth mentioning when compared to his life. As long as he was alive, he could continue to obtain the treasures and spirit pills. Therefore, he was very cooperative and looked sincere. He explained in great detail, as he was afraid that Chu Li would not be satisfied. Chu Li nodded in satisfaction and smiled. Master Jin, you're more tactful. You're willing to accept your loss. Are you really going to kill us? Jin Shurong asked. He speculated that if there were no accidents, Chu Li would not kill the two of them. Otherwise, he could have just poisoned senior brother Nangong to death. There was no need to save him. Chu Li shook his head. There's no point in killing you, and you're not a threat anyway. He kept the jade pendants and spirit pills into his inner pocket. Then, he took out the jade pendant that he obtained from the cave and looked at it slowly. Jin Shurong and Nangong Jing stared at the dull jade pendant. The jade pendant did not look like it was carved from good jade. It was simple and unadorned. It was definitely not the work of a master. On the whole, it did not look like a treasure. No one would be willing to pick it up if it was thrown on the street. They had sharp eyes. One look at the jade pendant and they knew it was not an ordinary item. Nangong Jing asked, Is this the Flying Star Sect's jade of inheritance? Chu Li said, Who knows? It could be from another sect or just an ordinary treasure. Why don't you take a look? No need. Nangong Jing scoffed. Jin Shurong said, Let me try. Chu Li handed the jade pendant to Jin Shurong. Jin Shurong's acupuncture points were not sealed, but he was heavily injured and his bones were almost broken. Therefore, he did not have to worry about escaping. Jin Shurong picked up the jade pendant with difficulty and slowly raised it to his eyes. Then, he channeled his remaining inner energy and slowly injected it. Bang! He suddenly fell backward. The jade pendant had already flown out of his palm. Chu Li reached behind him, and the jade pendant flew into his hand. After Jin Shurong fell to the ground with a thud, Chu Li caught the jade pendant and shook his head. Looks like you won't make it. I want to take another look. Jin Shurong shouted with red eyes. He was not convinced. Moreover, he could feel the strong energy in the jade pendant. It was definitely not an ordinary treasure. He was eager to find out what treasure it was. Otherwise, he would not be able to sleep well. Chu Li smiled and handed the jade pendant back to him. Jin Shurong closed his eyes and sat down. He took a deep breath and looked at Chu Li. Please, give me another spirit recovery pill. Chu Li smiled and took out a jade bottle. He opened it and handed him a milky yellow spirit pill. Jin Shurong swallowed it. After a while, his face became rosier and he was full of energy. He did not look like he was injured. Moreover, his aura was turbulent and his cultivation level was higher than before. However, there was a price to pay. Jin Shurong placed the jade pendant in front of his eyes and injected inner energy into it again. However, he did not expect his inner energy to be bounced back by a huge force. With a muffled bang, he was sent flying 10 meters away. Chu Li waved his hand and picked up the jade pendant on the ground. Then, he tossed it to Nangong Jing and unsealed his acupuncture point. Without the treasure, Nangong Jing was no threat. Nangong Jing lowered his head and looked at it for a while. He carefully touched it as if he was trying to figure out the material of the jade pendant. After a while, Nangong Jing could not figure it out. He slowly injected some inner energy into the jade pendant but was quickly bounced back by a strong force. With a muffled bang, the jade pendant almost flew away. Chu Li smiled. "Can you guys find out?" "It's strange," Nangong Jing said. "Is this really the jade pendant?" Chu Li said, "I can swear to God." Nangong Jing frowned. "It's hard to say if it's the Flying Star Sect's inheritance." As soon as he said that, he tried to probe it with his spiritual force. Suddenly, his vision shook violently as if his body was shaking violently. His internal organs were flipped over and he felt an indescribable pain. If it really was the Flying Star Sect's inheritance, there should be something strange about it. Unfortunately, they could not find anything. He was sure that this was not the Flying Star Sect's inheritance. Otherwise, there would be no need for this jade pendant. They were all powerhouses among the Heaven-Shaking Pavilion's disciples. In the entire martial arts world, they were top-notch masters. Yet, they could not do anything to this jade pendant. If it was someone with low martial arts skills, they would not be able to open it. Chu Li scoffed. "Can you give up now? Although I don't know what it is, I'm sure it's a great treasure," Nangong Jing said. Chu Li smiled. "So, it still belongs to the Heaven-Shaking Pavilion? You won't be able to keep it," Nangong Jing said. "If it's not us, it'll be the other senior and junior brothers." Chu Li said, "Let's see if it'll be you guys robbing me or me robbing you." As soon as he said that, he snatched the jade pendant back and put it in his inner pocket. Then, he waved his hand and disappeared. After letting them see it and deny that it was the Flying Star Sect's inheritance, they could only gather a limited number of people, and the Heaven-Shaking Pavilion would not pay too much attention to it. Chu Li knew that he could not go against the Heaven-Shaking Pavilion now. He needed to seize the time to condense 9C of energy as soon as possible so that he could use the 9 Swords unification. Then, he would be able to fight against the Heaven-Shaking Pavilion. Chapter 22:13. Chu Li appeared at the peak of a tall mountain. Recalling what happened earlier, he sighed and shook his head. He did not hesitate to kill Zhao Haiyuan. First, Zhao Haiyuan killed him, Shao Qi and Sun Mingyue. Second, he did not know much about the Heaven-Shaking Pavilion and did not know how strong it was. This time, when he ran into Nangong Jing and Jin Shurong, he didn't try to kill them. He just robbed them and humiliated them, all in order to infuriate them and force them to attack him. At most, he would drag their friends into it. This way, he could buy time to master the 9 Swords into one. He would be confident enough to fight against the Heaven-Shaking Pavilion. Now that he had not mastered the 9 Swords into one, he was not confident enough. This was not a matter of courage, but reality. The strong were strong and the weak were weak. In such a situation, he could not fight on impulse. If he blindly used force, he would only disappear. Even if he had the life and death scripture, he could not court death. He stretched out his hand and took out the jade pendant. It was dull and lifeless like a stone. This was the real inheritance of the Flying Star Sect. Unfortunately, those without star power could not obtain it. He had already glimpsed a little bit of it, but because his cultivation was still weak, he could not obtain all of it. He had only obtained the mental cultivation method of the next level. Through this inheritance jade, he was confident in the Flying Star sect and decided to cultivate the Flying Star technique. This kind of inheritance was not something that sects in the Grandmaster realm could do. Since it was passed down level by level, Chu Li guessed that it was a technique from the upper heaven or even the upper heaven. The Flying Star technique was an antique study from the upper heaven. He suddenly frowned and disappeared in a flash. Just as he disappeared, 6 old men slowly appeared, turning their heads to look at their surroundings. One of the elders in green scoffed. "Nothing. This young man is smart." Another elder scoffed. "He must have heard the news and fled. I don't believe he can escape from us." The first elder scoffed. "Unless he throws away all his treasures. Otherwise, how can he throw away those treasures? Then he can only wait for death. Hurry up and chase after him. Don't be so arrogant. We'll lose him." "How is that possible? Even if he has the stone of invisibility, he can't block our detection of the jade pendant." "That might not be the case. Old Hu, you really like to belittle your own power and boost the morale of others. He is just a junior, and he is also from an unorthodox background. No matter how capable he is, how can he escape from the palm of our heaven-shaking tower? This guy is not an ordinary person. We can't be careless." All right, I'll listen to you. Otherwise, you'll be complacent if an accident happens." They all smiled and shook their heads, their expressions relaxed. They knew that Chu Li was extremely powerful, but they did not really take it to heart. No matter how powerful his martial arts was, he would not be able to withstand a single blow from the heaven-shaking tower's treasures. Furthermore, no matter how big the world was, there was no place for Chu Li to hide unless he ran to Taihao Peak. However, the Great Heaven Peak was not a place that one could casually enter, even if his woman was a disciple of the Great Heaven Peak. The old man who spoke first frowned. "What happened? This kid really disappeared." An elder tried to sense it in disbelief. He shook his head and sighed. "It's really strange. This kid is a little interesting." The remaining 4 elders tried to sense it, but they could not find Chu Li. At this time, Chu Li had already entered the Wheel Pagoda. The Earth Demonic Stone had merged with the Wheel Pagoda, completely concealing his aura and isolating him from any senses. "I don't believe it." The 4 elders stopped being relaxed and became serious. They sat down with their legs crossed and began to condense their energies while trying to deduce Chu Li's whereabouts. Unfortunately, they could not find Chu Li. "Senior Brother Zhou, if we go back with our tails between our legs, we'll be too ashamed to face anyone." One of the elders shook his head and sighed. "What will the tower think? What will Nangong Jing and Jin Shurong think of us? What will those young fellows think of us? What should we do?" The elder who spoke first scoffed. "Why don't we return to the tower and use the Cosmos Jade to look for him? Isn't that a little overkill?" Another elder shook his head. "He only stole something and didn't kill anyone. It's not worth it, right? The value of a piece of Cosmos Jade isn't something a junior can match." "This junior is different." Someone shook his head. "Then we'll go back and use the Cosmos Jade," the elder who spoke first said in a low voice. The others stopped arguing and disappeared. Chu Li left all the treasures in the Rotary Pagoda. He knew that the heaven-shaking tower would be able to sense these treasures. Even the Earth Demonic Stone would not be able to block the heaven-shaking tower's senses. However, it was not safe to hide the treasures in the Rotary Pagoda. Back then, Fu Kaiwei used the Cosmos Jade to find him in the Rotary Pagoda. The heaven-shaking tower might be able to do the same. He shook his head. The heaven-shaking tower was really troublesome. He thought about it and began to build the pagoda again. An hour later, 3 more rotary pagodas were built, forming a 9-tower layout. When the 9th stone tower was erected, dark clouds gathered in the sky. Thunder could be seen, but it did not strike. Chuli looked up at the sky and felt a strong pressure coming from the sky. He did not expect to do anything in the end. The dark clouds slowly dispersed and the sky was clear again. Chuli could feel a strange aura condensing. The 9 towers seemed to form a world of its own that was completely isolated from the outside world. The 9 towers combined to form a huge formation of the 9 tripod cauldrons. Chuli heaved a sigh of relief and smiled as he stood in the area of the 9 towers. He had been worried about this before, so he had been preparing the stones. After carving the stones, he only needed to pile them up accurately. That was why the 3 towers were built very quickly and were completed in less than an hour. On a towering peak in midair, in a basilica, the 6 elders who had been tracking Chuli earlier were sitting cross-legged on cattail hassocks. They formed a circle with a small gray stone in the middle. It looked like they had picked it up from the river. It was the cosmos jade that Fu Kaiwei had used earlier. They looked serious. After looking at each other, they slowly reached out their right palms. Their 6 palms stopped above the cosmos jade and slowly condensed. 6 strange forces fell into the cosmos jade. The cosmos jade suddenly lit up and turned into 6 rays of light that fell on their foreheads. The 6 of them looked serious as white steam rose from their heads. After a while, the white steam slowly dissipated. They opened their eyes with gloomy expressions. "I didn't find it! I didn't find it!" The 6 of them looked at each other and their expressions became more and more gloomy. With the help of the cosmos jade, there was almost nothing they could not see, nothing unexpected, and they were invincible. This time, they were defeated by a young man who came from an unorthodox background. They were really unwilling to accept it. What happened? Is he dead? It's highly possible. They did not believe that Chuli could hide, and could not find him even after using the cosmos jade. They would rather believe that Chuli was dead, so they did not notice anything. Sigh. Forget it, let's wait and see. He should be hiding in an extremely secret place, but it's impossible for him to hide forever. Chapter 22:14. Chuli did not know that the heaven-shaking tower was spying on him. He sat cross-legged on top of a stone tower and began to cultivate the 4th level of the flying star technique. The sky was filled with stars. Beams of starlight fell on Chuli's forehead and quickly disappeared. The endless starlight disappeared quickly and was quickly devoured by Chuli, condensing in his 5 ocean of energy. When the ocean of energy was full and there was nowhere else to fill, the star power continued to pour in and began to flow in his meridians, squeezing them. Meridians were intangible but material. Physical forces could not touch them, but inner energy and star power could and hurt them. As the star power poured in, the meridians were slowly expanded. The astral power flowed ceaselessly between the 5 sea of aura, just like the lake water flowing from one lake to another, and then to the next lake. The lake water flowed between the 5 lakes, but more and more water flowed, and the lake was full, so the river channel was opened. After the meridians were opened, they slowly thinned and were about to burst as the star power poured in. At that moment, the starlight suddenly stopped falling and the star power flowed between the meridians, carefully moving it bit by bit. As time passed, the star power slowly merged into the meridians. The unique properties of the star power allowed it to merge into the meridians, making them stronger and wider. It was twice as wide as before. This was the 4th level of the flying star technique, the meridian cleansing technique. After the meridians were cleansed, they would be able to accommodate stronger star power. Time passed slowly. He sat on the tower and cultivated for 3 days without rest. The meridian cleansing technique was completed and his meridians expanded by more than 3 times. They were stronger than before. Although his inner energy did not increase, the power of his martial arts increased greatly. He began to cultivate the 5th level of the flying star technique. He continued to visualize the star chart and established a connection with another star. Every star was different, just like the difference between spirit herbs. He was currently absorbing the star power of the weakest star. As he progressed to the 5th level, he would be able to sense stronger stars. This star power poured in, and he felt a chill on his head. Then, his meridians felt like they were being cut by knives. He knew that this star power was more aggressive. He guided it to flow between the 5 ocean of energy and slowly directed it to another acupuncture point. His body felt like it was being crushed and his vision went black. The star force was even fiercer and more domineering than before. Opening the sea of chi was even more violent and painful. A moment later, a thunderous boom reverberated in his ears. His eyes immediately lit up as he saw the 6th chi sea in his body, excluding the dantian. Astral power continuously poured into the sea of energy. After 2 hours it was finally full. He slowly opened his eyes, and a sharp light shot out of them. A smile appeared on his face. As expected of the 6th level, the speed at which he condensed his sea of chi was much faster than before. The only problem was that it was too painful. He wondered if the remaining sea of chi would be even more painful. This clearly showed how difficult and painful the flying star incantation was. It was not a pity that it was lost. Cultivating this level was so painful that one's vision would turn black. Once one fainted, it would be no different from suicide. The star power was so strong and overbearing that if one lost control, it would destroy the body. His soul power was strong, and he had the life and death scripture, so he was not afraid of this. However, others did not have such abilities. Once they lost control, they would definitely die. Many disciples of the Flying Star sect had probably died because of the Flying Star incantation. The 6th level of the Flying Star incantation was to cleanse the internal organs, making them stronger and able to withstand the impact of the star power. The 7th level of the Flying Star incantation could sense more powerful stars. The star power was even more fierce and overbearing, and the body had to withstand great pressure. A small heart could collapse, and it was extremely dangerous. He could faintly feel that the power of the star power was similar to the spiritual energy of the upper heaven. However, spiritual energy and star power had their own characteristics and magical uses. It all depended on how they were used. After he cultivated the 7th level, he could directly see the next 2 levels. The 8th level of the Flying Star incantation was a brainwashing technique. It used the star power to strengthen the soul power. The 9th level was a deduction technique. It used the stars to deduce the general trend of the world and predict good or bad luck. When Chuli saw the 8th level, he knew it was dangerous. It was extremely dangerous. The star power was so strong and overbearing that it wanted to supplement the soul. Just thinking about it made him shiver, and he did not dare to step in. On the 9th level, he saw the shadow of the Heavenly Astra Jade Stamp. The Heavenly Astra Jade Stamp was a simplified version of the 9th level of the Flying Star incantation. The 9th level of the Flying Star incantation was specially stated that the 9th level was mysterious and unpredictable. It was not something that could be cultivated by humans. It required a gift from the heavens. It was fine even if one could not cultivate it. After cultivating the 8th level, one could start cultivating from the 1st level again. They would sense stronger stars and possess stronger star power. Then, they could go from the 2nd level to the 8th level, and the cycle would repeat. There were countless stars in the sky. There was no end to them. The Flying Star incantation was endless and had endless potential. Chuli fell into deep thought after he read it. The 8th level was too dangerous. He did not want to take the risk now. Since his soul power was stronger, he could start cultivating from the 1st level and look for stronger stars. He found a star sphere and began to cleanse his meridians. He found another star sphere and began to cleanse his internal organs. When he found the 6th star sphere, The power of the star sphere was almost twice as powerful as the spiritual energy of the upper heavenly layer. As a result, it became more dangerous. It meant that the damage caused by the star power would be difficult to repair with the spiritual energy of the upper heaven. However, the star power was twice as powerful as the spiritual energy of the upper heaven. It did not mean that his cultivation level had increased by 2 times. The spiritual energy of the upper heaven was as pure as spring water. It was compressed and condensed into all kinds of unique inner energy through various heart techniques. On the other hand, the star power was fierce and domineering. It could not be converted into unique inner energy by the heart technique. Star power was still star power and its power did not change. Only the flying star finger could activate the star power. The power of the star power was not as powerful as the unique inner energy formed from spiritual energy. However, it was difficult to refine it. After being hit by the flying star finger, it would not be easy to expel it. The bright moon hung high in the sky. He looked up for a while, and did not know how many days he had spent. Since he had formed 9 energy seas, he would try to combine the 9 swords into one. He first used the heaven-murdering sword art to activate his inner energy and stored it in one of his chi seas. Then, he used the monarch descends sword art, followed by the peerless sword art. All 9 sword arts were activated, transforming into inner energy that was stored in one of his chi seas. When the 9 inner energies were formed, he suddenly flashed into the wheel pagoda. There were 9 treasure swords in front of him. He focused on 9 things at once. The inner energy from the 9 energy seas shot toward each treasure sword. Buzz! With a soft sound, the 9 swords suddenly trembled and glowed faintly. Then, they slowly rose into the air, as if there was an invisible force supporting them. Then, they gathered together to form a sword wheel. Chuli was surprised. He only injected inner energy into the swords and did nothing else. The invisible force supporting them was formed by themselves. The 9 swords seemed to be weightless. Chuli activated the fundamental technique and made a sword gesture to point at the 9 swords. The sword wheel formed by the 9 swords suddenly turned into a shadow and moved at high speed like a circle. He took out a metal plate, which was the one that Enshurong used before. He tossed it into the air and pointed at it with his sword finger. Chapter 22:15. The 9 treasure swords fell as well. After one hit, the inner energy on the swords had dissipated, and they could no longer maintain the sword wheel. He disappeared from the spot and appeared outside the next moment. He took a few stones and returned to the rotary pagoda. He was multitasking as he directed the inner energy in his 9 chi seas to their respective treasure swords. The 9 swords formed a sword wheel again and slowly floated in midair. He pinched his fingers to form a sword gesture, and the sword wheel began to spin at high speed, forming a shadow. It was like a shiny silver wheel quietly hovering in midair. It was quite strange, and it was hard to imagine that there were 9 treasure swords. He threw a stone with his left hand, and when it flew far away, he pointed his right hand with a sword gesture. Buzz! The silver wheel arrived in an instant, and the palm-sized stone disappeared. Without waiting for the 9 treasure swords to fall and disperse, the 9 sword energies shot into the air again. The sword wheel did not disperse, and it followed the fundamental technique. The sword wheel did not slow down either, maintaining its silver ring shape. Chuli let out a long sigh of relief. It seemed like he still had to cultivate it well. He had to be familiar with the swords so that the process would not be interrupted, and it would not be taken advantage of. One sword to decide the world, one to decide life and death. If the opponent did not fall after one sword, the opponent would often find an opportunity to counterattack. He could multitask, so he continued to channel his inner energy to prepare for the second sword while he performed the first sword. He needed to be familiar with the swords so that there would not be an opportunity to be taken advantage of. Otherwise, life and death would be decided by one sword. After familiarizing himself with the swords, he realized that the inner energy in his chi could only be used 3 times. After that, he would need to accumulate the inner energy of each sword technique again, and it would take him enough time to refill it. Although his chi was not as vast as his dantian, the 9 swords united formation consumed too much inner energy, so he could not be lazy. The best way was to expand his chi and use the meridian cleansing technique of the flying star technique to expand it bit by bit. After 3 days, he felt that he could continuously perform 3 swords without any delay, so he left the rotary pagoda. He wanted to go to the foreign battleground to take a look and help Shao Qi and the others to prevent any accident. He made a sword case that was as wide as his shoulders and as tall as his swords. It contained 9 swords, and at first glance, it looked like he was carrying a book basket. Although he felt that carrying such a sword case was very conspicuous and a little ridiculous, for the sake of his life, he could not tolerate anything else. After all, he could not leave the sword here and run back to retrieve it at a critical moment. Many of the top-notch experts he had encountered had the ability to lock the void, either with formations or treasures, so he couldn't come back and find trouble. If he really could leave, he could just run away. There was no need to fight them head-on. He had just left the Chakra Pagoda and arrived at the peak of a mountain. He looked down at the surrounding scenery and felt the magnificence of the mountains and rivers. He was moved and adjusted his emotions. Adjusting one's emotions was like playing the zither. Blindly cultivating would often lead to one's death. He needed to adjust his state of mind properly in order to maintain the quickness of his thought. Whether it was cultivating or fighting, he would be able to deal with them with ease. The surrounding void fluctuated, and 6 old men suddenly appeared, surrounding him. "Good lad, we finally caught him," a green-robed old man scoffed. "At least we didn't waste our energy. Chu Li, hand it over." Chu Li frowned as he looked at the 6 elders. "The heaven-shaking pavilion? It's good that you know. Hand over the jade of inheritance that you snatched." The green-robed old man with a sallow face said in a low voice, "We can spare your life. If not, we can still snatch the jade pendant by killing you." Chu Li asked, "What jade of inheritance? You can deceive Nangong Jing and Jin Shurong, but you can't deceive us." The sallow-faced old man said coldly, "You obtained the Flying Star Sect's jade of inheritance. We must get it back." Chu Li said, "What jade of inheritance? The heaven-shaking pavilion is too overbearing. Aren't you afraid of being attacked by everyone?" The sallow-faced old man laughed. "Do you think we'll snatch an ordinary item? Moreover, if we're attacked by everyone, who's going to be the vanguard?" Predicting good or bad luck was their fundamental ability. Not everyone's fortuitous encounters would be snatched, or they would become the target of everyone and be attacked by everyone. They could not snatch the jade of inheritance from the heaven-shaking pavilion. Even if Chu Li was skilled in martial arts and was a disciple of the Rain Master Hall, they would not hesitate to snatch it. It was not that the sects had never joined forces against the heaven-shaking pavilion before, but they had predicted it in advance and blocked it before it could explode. Before they could form an alliance, they were destroyed by them. Therefore, other than the heaven-shaking pavilion, they were not afraid of anyone else. Chu Li nodded. "All right, if I say that I don't have the jade of inheritance, you won't give up, right?" "We've already predicted it." The sallow-faced old man sighed. "The Flying Star Sect's inheritance is with you. There's no point in denying it. It's better for you to hand it over. Moreover, it's useless even if you have the Flying Star Sect's inheritance. You won't be able to cultivate it." Chu Li said, "I don't have any inheritance. You must have made a mistake." If he admitted that he had the inheritance, they could forcefully snatch it. However, if he did not admit that he had the inheritance, they would create something out of nothing and forcefully snatch it. If he took care of this group of people, or even beat the heaven-shaking pavilion up, it would be more satisfying for everyone and he would gain a higher reputation. Now, he realized where he was at a disadvantage. Under the suppression of the 9 divisions and the other sects, his reputation was far from his strength. It was not convenient for him to do things, and he had a lot of trouble in his life. If his reputation was high enough, the heaven-shaking pavilion would have some reservations this time and would not be so unscrupulous. We've always been polite before resorting to force. We won't say much if you snatch Nangong Jing and Jin Shurong. It's your ability to snatch their treasures, the sallow-faced old man said. What do you want? We'll see if we can trade it. Chu Li shook his head. I want a lot. Tell me about it. The universe jade, Chu Li said. The sallow-faced old man said, Impossible. Chu Li frowned. If that's the case, it's impossible to trade it. I can only snatch it? The universe jade is a treasure unique to the heaven-shaking pavilion. It's extremely precious. Each piece is related to the world situation. The sallow-faced old man said. A piece of universe jade could predict a fortuitous encounter and a major event. It was more than just an inheritance. More importantly, they had already used a piece of Qiankuan jade. It was the only piece of Qiankuan jade that the 6 of them had. They could no longer take out another 2 pieces of Qiankuan jade in exchange for an inheritance, unless it was the martial arts inheritance of the Great Sky Peak. They had predicted that the Flying Star Sect's inheritance would be powerful, but if it was that powerful, it would not be extinct. Therefore, between 2 universe jades and an inheritance, they chose to snatch it. Chu Li shook his head. Let's do it then. Don't blame me for being merciless. Since you're so insensible, we'll have to use force, the sallow-faced old man said. Before he finished speaking, the 6 divine fortune fingers had already arrived. They were silent, traceless, and without warning. Chu Li had been watching with the omniscient mirror. He moved and used the flying star finger. TSS. The flying star finger hit the sallow-faced old man at lightning speed. 2 light shields lit up around the sallow-faced old man. Bang! Bang! 2 muffled sounds were almost one. The flying star finger penetrated the light shield without any resistance and landed on the sallow-faced old man. Chapter 22:16. Qi. The flying star finger pierced through the elder's chest, and a bloody hole was clearly visible. The elder felt all the energy in his body rushing out of his chest. In the blink of an eye, his inner energy and strength disappeared without a trace. His body was empty and weak like a person who had been ill for a long time. He wanted to dodge the second finger but could not. Qi. The second flying star finger shot through his chest and pierced through him again. The sallow-faced elder could not stand any more and fell to the ground. Chu Li's figure was graceful as he dodged the 5 elders' wild attacks. They were furious as they watched their senior brother get hurt by the finger force right under their noses. They were too incompetent. Chu Li's body movement technique was too brilliant. No matter how high their cultivation level was, they could not touch him. Their profound martial arts were useless. Chu Li was very impressed by the flying star finger. He did not expect it to be so strong and domineering. It had a miraculous effect on breaking through protective energy. It was better than any antique study. Moreover, it was faster than the heavenly predictive finger. Since he had cultivated the flying star technique to this level, even if he could not open up 9 Sea of Qi, the flying star finger alone was a great achievement. Qi, 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 Qi. Bang, 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 bang! The force of the flying star finger broke through the layers of protective aura. Even though they had treasures on them, and layers of protective aura appeared one after another, under the incredible speed of the flying star finger, many layers of protective aura could not be deployed in time. Another 3 elders in green fell. Only 2 elders were left trying to hold on. It seemed like they were not attacking Chuli, but were being chased by him. "Run!" the sallow-faced elder shouted as he held onto a pine tree. "Senior brother Zhou, you guys go first," one of the elders with a long face said. The sallow-faced elder shook his head and sighed. "We can't." He wanted to use the void diversion to leave immediately so that he would not drag his fellow disciples down. Even if he was severely injured, he had treasures with him. He could leave as long as he crushed them. Unfortunately, he could not crush a jade pendant. His whole body was weak, and he could not exert any strength. He was trembling as he held onto the tree. It was extremely strenuous. No matter how powerful a treasure was, it was useless if it could not be activated. "I'll hold him off. You take senior brother Zhou and leave first," the long-faced elder said in a deep voice. Another square-faced, righteous-looking old man nodded. Chuli shook his head and chuckled. "If you knew this would happen, you wouldn't have done it in the first place. If we had known this would happen, we would have brought more people with us," the square-faced elder said coldly. "Chuli, don't be so smug. Our heaven's taunting tower is not to be trifled with. Just wait for your death. Then I'll drag all of you down with me before I die." Chuli scoffed. He stretched out his left hand and tapped lightly. Chi-chi. 2 soft whistling sounds rang out at the same time. His left hand and right hand shot out a finger each. The expressions of the 2 old men changed drastically. They did not expect Chuli to be able to use both of his fingers, but he had been holding back all this while. Now that he had suddenly used it, they had no way of dodging, so they could only take the hit. "Let's go," the sallow-faced old man shouted. If they didn't leave now, they wouldn't have another chance. Once they were hit by the finger force, they wouldn't be able to activate their escape treasures. The 2 old men hurriedly took out treasures from their bosoms. Chi-chi. With 2 soft whistling sounds, the 2 old men were hit by the finger force again. Their bodies fell limply to the ground. In the end, they still couldn't activate their treasures. 2 jade pendants fell into the bushes at the side. Chuli chuckled and came to the side of the 6 old men. He shook his head and said, "As the saying goes, those who kill will be killed. Robbing is the same. You didn't think that there would be a day when you would be robbed, right?" As Chuli spoke, he quickly took out their treasures and put them aside. Then, he took out a bottle of spirit pills from one of the old men's bosoms. He poured out 6 pills and stuffed them into the 6 old men's mouth. All of the old men had 2 bloody holes in their chests, and the positions of the holes were exactly the same. When the old men saw the injuries of their fellow sect members, they were shocked. They were even more wary of Chuli's finger force. Chuli sat down and smiled at the sallow-faced old man. He pointed at the few jade pendants beside him and said, "Tell me about the treasures in here." The sallow-faced old man shook his head and said coldly, "Chuli, it's a pity. There aren't any good treasures in here." "Then tell me about them." Chuli said, "If you're willing to bet, you must be willing to admit defeat. You people from the Heaven's Shaking Tower should still have this bit of spirit. Just like Nangong Jing and Jin Shurong back then, right?" The sallow-faced old man took a deep breath and scoffed. "All right, if you're willing to bet, you must admit defeat. There's no harm in telling us. These 3 pieces are protective items that can activate the vigor energy to protect one's body. As for the other 3 pieces, one is a healing item, one is used to injure the enemy, and the last one is used to shift the void." Chuli took out a slightly dull sword-shaped jade pendant and said with a smile, "How can this be used to injure the enemy?" "It contains a ray of sword energy," the sallow-faced old man said calmly. "It can injure people without them noticing. It can be used at a crucial moment, and it can be used to turn the tables." Chuli nodded. "A strike at a crucial moment can indeed turn the tables." The sallow-faced old man said, "Chuli, you won't kill us, right?" He was not certain that Chuli would not kill them. Now that he had injured them but did not kill them, it could be because he wanted to know the use of these treasures. He wanted to use himself to test whether Chu Li was like that. Chu Li said, "There's no need to kill you. If you want to recover, it'll take at least a year or so. By then, the heavens-shaking tower won't provoke me anymore." "You talk big." The sallow-faced old man secretly sighed and said in a deep voice, "Who do you think you are? Do you really think you can win against the heavens-shaking tower?" Chu Li smiled and said, "That's not necessarily true. When you hear my voice, you must quickly run away." "Then I'll wait and see." The sallow-faced old man scoffed. He believed Chu Li's words because Chu Li did not kill Nangong Jing and Jin Shurong back then. It was not impossible that he would not kill them now. Chu Li placed the jade pendants in his bosom and looked at the other old man. That old man quickly explained the functions of the 4 jade pendants beside him. Chu Li took away the 6 old men's treasures one by one. Most of them were jade pendants, some were spirit pills, and even a jade Buddha. Each of them had their own functions, but to Chu Li they were not that useful. If it was the protection shield, he had enough to deal with it. He had the mystic tortoise shield, the supreme indestructible body of the Vajra, and the star power protection, so it was enough to deal with it. However, he could give them to Shao Qi, Sun Mingyue, Lu Yurong, and the others. If not, he would destroy them directly to save space. The items used to hurt the enemy piqued his interest. They were extremely powerful, otherwise they would not have been interested in them. Especially when they were killed by the silencing ray last time, he was very wary of such treasures and valued them more. After keeping all the treasures, their injuries were stabilized and they would not die. Chu Li looked at them with a smile. "It's been such a long time, but you still haven't secretly asked for reinforcements?" The sallow-faced old man said in a deep voice, "Even if they came, they wouldn't be a match for us." Chu Li chuckled and said, "You're smart. What a pity." The sallow-faced old man's expression was calm, but his heart was filled with resentment. He knew that Chu Li felt it was a pity that he could not snatch any more treasures. It had always been the heavens-shaking tower snatching others' treasures, but this was the first time someone else snatched the heavens-shaking tower's treasures. They had become a disgrace to the heavens-shaking tower. Chapter 22:17. Chu Li decided to go to the foreign battleground for 2 reasons. One was to look for Shao Qi and Sun Mingyue, and 2 was to test the power of the 9 swords united as one. He wanted to see if he could take on great responsibilities and kill Song Wuji with the 9 swords united as one. As for the remaining 2 levels of the flying star technique, he was not in a hurry to cultivate them. He did not want to cultivate them unless he had no other choice. It was too dangerous. Even though he had survived the perishable ray and died once, he guessed that the life and death scripture could preserve his soul and resurrect him. However, he was not sure if he was right. What if the star energy entered his soul and he died again? What if he could not recover? He had to be cautious when it came to his soul. He wanted to go to the Taihao Peaks Sutra Library. He might find some information about the Flying Star sect, which would help his cultivation. More importantly, after cultivating the Flying Star technique, his Heaven Star Insight technique had improved. His senses were sharper and his predictions were more accurate. The Heaven Star Insight technique warned him not to cultivate the 8th and 9th levels of the Flying Star technique. He chose to believe in the Heaven Star Insight technique, so he did not want to cultivate it. Now that he had the Flying Star Finger and the 9 swords united as one, it was enough to protect him. If it was still not enough, he could consider the last 2 levels. "You want to go to the foreign battleground?" the sallow-faced elder Zhou Jing asked. Chu Li nodded. "I heard it's very lively there. It's a good chance to make a contribution." The Azuras are going crazy. Something big must have happened. If I were you, I wouldn't go. It'll be a dead end," Zhou Jing said. Chu Li asked, I can't protect myself with my current martial arts? Your martial arts might be profound, but you're just one person. Azura likes to fight alone, but they never fight alone in the extraterritorial battlefield. Zhou Jing said in a deep voice, for the sake of your little life, it's better to stay away from the extraterritorial battlefield. In the foreign battleground, the heaven-shaking tower would not plunder. This was the rule of the heaven-shaking tower. All the sects knew this rule, and the heaven-shaking tower would not violate it. The disciples of the heaven-shaking tower who went to the foreign battleground were truly selfless. They used the heaven-shaking tower to predict good or bad luck, as well as to clearly see through opportunities to deal with the Azura. They definitely could not do anything that harmed others and fattened themselves, or else it would be ruining the reputation of the heaven-shaking tower. It was precisely because of this that the heaven-shaking pavilion had such a great reputation among the sections. Normally, they would snatch fortuitous encounters, but their flaws did not mask their jade. Chu Li smiled. Killing Azuras is the most satisfying way to kill them, so I definitely won't let them go. We'll meet again. With that, he disappeared in a flash and reappeared in the 9 pagodas. He had placed all the treasures he had obtained into the pagoda to suppress them so that they wouldn't be able to detect his whereabouts. Now that he had cultivated the flying star technique to this stage, it would be even more difficult for them to sense his location. Without these treasures to guide them, it would be almost impossible for them to find him. Chu Li heaved a sigh of relief. Zhou Jing punched the ground angrily. Then, he grimaced. Without the protection of his divine art, his hand was in pain from the small stones on the ground. Senior brother Zhou, forget it. The square-faced elder advised. There's nothing we can do if our skills are inferior. Zhou Jing gritted his teeth. This brat, I must get back at him. Let's be careful and seal our mouth. The square-faced old man said, if the other brothers find out, won't they laugh at us? Remember to keep your mouths shut, especially young Feng. Zhou Jing glared and scoffed at a round-faced elder. Drink less. If you're drunk, lie down and sleep. Don't talk nonsense. Got it, senior brother Zhou? The round-faced elder said bitterly. Actually, there's nothing to be ashamed of. Whoever encounters Chu Li will suffer. If they want to laugh, let them. Everyone smiled. They felt much better when they thought about how their brothers and sisters were suffering. Chu Li appeared in the divine gate and exited it. The next moment, he was about to head to the fairy's capital when a strange force appeared out of nowhere in the void not far from him. Chu Li frowned and stopped. He closed-fist saluted the spirit tiger that slowly appeared. A male and female spirit tiger stood in the void. One was tall and the other was petite. Their snow-white fur fluttered even though there was no wind. Their imposing manner was so powerful that it froze the void around them. Chu Li closed-fist saluted. Greetings, both of you. What can I do for you? The male spirit tiger's voice rose in his mind. How's the matter of killing Song Wuji? Chu Li replied, I'm about to do it. About to? The male spirit tiger scoffed. I advise you to wait a little longer. Chu Li frowned. My cultivation level isn't enough? Far from enough. The male spirit tiger's voice echoed. Killing Song Wuji now is equivalent to suicide. Chu Li took a deep breath. Song Wuji's cultivation level is so high. It's beyond your imagination. The male spirit tiger scoffed. Or else, he would have died countless times. Chu Li nodded. If that's the case, I'll train harder. You're progressing well. Continue to work hard. The male spirit tiger said. Also, don't let the little dragon and tortoise get involved. All right. Chu Li nodded slowly. This time, he was thinking of going to the 100,000 hills to see them. Even if they were in hibernation, their abilities were growing rapidly. It would be good to take a look at them. After spending so much time together, they had developed feelings for each other. At that moment, the female spirit tiger's gentle voice rang in his mind. Little fella, you're cultivating star power. It's best not to use it too much. Chu Li was stunned. The female spirit tiger said, the body on the second heaven is too weak. It can't handle star power. Although your body is strong, using it too much will leave behind side effects. More importantly, cultivating star power for too long will change your temperament. You'll become cold-blooded and heartless. Chu Li nodded thoughtfully. From the looks of it, he should not let the star power brainwash affect his soul. The male spirit tiger scoffed. You can't rush to kill Song Wuji. There's only one chance. Chu Li fist saluted. The two spirit tigers slowly disappeared into the void. Chu Li stood in the void and pondered. They suddenly appeared and warned him not to rush. It was obvious that they had been watching him. Unfortunately, he could not see any spirit beasts in the outland realm. It was as if they had all disappeared. Since the two spirit tigers warned him like that, it must be a good idea. He still had to improve if he wanted to kill Song Wuji. However, with his current cultivation level, it was not easy to improve. He felt that he had reached his limit and it was almost impossible to improve further. He quickly cast aside his thoughts and appeared in the fairy's capital in a flash. He appeared in the imperial house. The entire imperial house was shrouded in a layer of solemnity and tension. Everyone in the imperial house walked softly and breathed softly. They were afraid of making too much noise. He also saw Xiao Shi, who was in the imperial garden with a tense face. He suddenly appeared in front of Xiao Shi. Xiao Shi was dressed in a yellow gown that was unusually luxurious. Even though her beautiful face was tense, it was still beautiful. She looked up and saw him. She glared at him and scoffed. Little sister isn't here. Your Miss Lu isn't here either. Why are you here? Chu Li smiled. I just found out that you've become the Empress, so I came to have a look. Congratulations. What's there to congratulate? It's not interesting at all. Xiao Shi said snappily. I'd rather not be the Emperor. Chu Li asked, what happened? This bunch of courtiers are only pretending to obey but secretly opposing. It's so infuriating. Xiao Shi scoffed. It's not like they're not doing anything. They're just slowing things down. I can't just whip them. Chapter 22:18. Chu Li's brows twitched. Then you didn't do anything to teach them a lesson? They're eager to do so. Xiao Shi scoffed. Do you think I don't know what they're thinking? They're counting on me to beat them up, then they'll resign and win their reputation. Chu Li laughed. Don't tell me you've become a tyrant? Although I'm not a tyrant, I became one after that. Xiao Shi sneered. Then they'll become famous, and when they return to their hometown, they'll be treated like gods by the scholars. Chu Li said, all with the intention of gaining fame? Is there not a single minister who's loyal to the imperial court? Xiao Shi scoffed. There are quite a few, but they all think that for the sake of the Ji dynasty, it's better for me to abdicate as the Empress. It's a bad start, and from then on, the imperial harem won't be peaceful. Chu Li said, I don't believe that with your methods, you can't rope in someone who's really close to you. Xiao Shi pursed her lips and chuckled. Her smile was so bright that it lit up the entire imperial garden. It doesn't work even if I have these confidants. Now I can't let them speak, and instead, I have to make them jump along with me? Chu Li nodded slowly. If that's the case, these ministers will jump soon? Won't last long? I'm preparing for the imperial examinations. Xiao Shi said, I'll send out a batch of students. A new emperor brings a new minister. Those old fellows should understand that once they have this batch of students, they'll be well behaved, or else they'll be sent back to their hometown. Chu Li said, these old fellows are still very important. The students that come out of the imperial examinations can't be used for 10 years, and we can't suddenly promote them, or else we'll bury hidden dangers. Of course, I understand. Xiao Shi scoffed, but it's so infuriating. We know they're up to no good, but we have to pretend we don't know. How about Azura and Heavenly Demon? Julie asked. Seoshur said, not here. Your goddess attraction mountain has a master who cooperates with Stargazing Pavilion. They can predict Heavenly Demon, so it's slowly calming down, and it seems like Azura hasn't appeared much. Julie frowned and slowly nodded. Azura was crazy in the foreign battlefield, but they rarely appeared here. Clearly, something had happened. He had to go to the foreign battlefield as soon as possible to find the source, and see if he could use it. Seoshur asked, is Suin all right up there? Julie nodded. He has completed his merit and ascended to the upper heaven as a rainbow. If that's the case, he won't be able to come back. Seoshur looked melancholic. Julie smiled and said, he still chose to become a monk after all. By severing his ties with the secular world, your Su-An's ties with the secular world. Now that you've completed your merit, you've completely severed your ties with the secular world. Don't think too much about it, you should congratulate him instead. Sigh. Seoshur shook her head. She knew this logic, but she had always seen him as her son. If he suddenly left like this, she would inevitably worry. Even though Su-An's abilities were great and far beyond what she could compare to, she still couldn't help but worry. Julie asked, do you want to ascend now? Impossible. Seoshur sighed. If I leave now, what about the House of High Dukes? Who will be the new emperor? The imperial family of the Great Ji dynasty was quite pitiful. Up until now, they could not even find a suitable person to take up the mantle. She could only wait for the next generation to grow up and carefully train an emperor before ascending. Otherwise, she would be letting down the Great Ji dynasty and the High Duke's public house. Julie nodded slowly. How's little sister up there? Seoshur asked. Julie smiled and told her about it. Seoshur nodded lightly and sighed. Little sister's bitterness has finally come to an end. She can finally be with you. What about Lu Yurong? She's still in isolated cultivation. Julie replied. Sun Mingyue? Seoshur scoffed. She knew Chu Li's woman very well. Julie helplessly repeated. Seoshur frowned and stared at him. God is really blind. All right, I can't be bothered to talk to you. You should take care of that disciple of yours. Julie asked, Shurji? What's wrong? He's now possessed. Seoshur scoffed. He just has to pursue the bishop of the Holy Church of Light, Sun Mingyue's disciple. Julie asked, Li Meng? Yes. Seoshur replied. He's always going to the Great Light Peak. Chu Li's face darkened and he sighed. As a master, he paid little attention to his disciple, Pang Shurji. Usually, it was Seo Qi and Seoshur who guided him, but they did give him plenty of pointers. It was just that they rarely guided him personally. He had already advised Pang Shurji that the relationship between a man and a woman should not be forced. Pang Shurji had promised him, but now it seemed like he had reverted to his old ways. How disappointing! Seoshur said, just scold him. Don't scold him too harshly. After all, he's still young. He's so hot-blooded that he can't control himself. Chu Li coldly said, he's getting bolder now that I'm not around. Even if you're here, it's useless to be afraid. Seoshur shook her head. She had also scolded Pang Shurji before. Pang Shurji was very respectful towards her and listened obediently. However, he would return to his original state after a while. Scolding him again would take a long time, and after a while, he would not be able to do it again. She had already lost her temper and was too lazy to continue. He suddenly disappeared on the spot and appeared in a restaurant in the next moment. The sun was setting. Pang Shurji was dressed in a white robe. He was sitting alone at a table by the window on the second floor of the restaurant. He was drinking while looking at the beautiful sunset. He looked melancholic, and a lonely aura shrouded the surroundings. There were quite a number of customers on the second floor, but they were obediently 2 or 3 tables away from him. They did not dare to disturb him. Chu Li's sudden appearance made Pang Shurji feel it, and he quickly looked up. Master! Pang Shurji stood up abruptly and shouted. Chu Li sat opposite him and waved his hand, gesturing for him to sit down. Pang Shurji slowly sat down. His back was far away from the back of the chair, and he only sat at the front of the chair. Chu Li scoffed, "Stop pretending. You're not that cowardly. Sit properly." Pang Shurji smiled embarrassedly. He leaned his back against the back of the chair and smiled. "Master, you're finally back. My return won't affect the overall situation." Chu Li said, "Isn't it great now? The Great Ji's imperial court doesn't accept the new emperor." Pang Shurji scoffed, "Everyone is bullying her." Chu Li said, "Aren't you her backing?" "How can I be?" Pang Shurji quickly waved his hand and said, "I have the heart but I can't. I really hate myself for not being able to be like you, Master." "How long have you been cultivating?" Chu Li said, "You'll be much stronger than me in the future. Don't worry." "Yes." Pang Shurji smiled. After getting his master's affirmation, he suddenly felt confident. Chu Li said, "Is the martial arts world of the Great Ji all right?" "Master's divine might is still there. He can suppress them." Pang Shurji nodded. "Moreover, there's also Great Master Fa Yuan. No one dares to act recklessly." Chu Li nodded in satisfaction. Pang Shurji said, "But I heard that the Holy Church of Light isn't very stable. Bishop Sun left in a hurry. Li Meng can't control the formation now. A few priests are scheming against each other and draining the strength of the Holy Church of Light." Chu Li glanced at him. "So you're going there so frequently to help her?" "Yes." Pang Shurji quickly nodded. Chu Li scoffed, "You have good intentions. Don't you have any other intentions?" "Of course, I have a little selfishness." Pang Shurji smiled embarrassedly. Chapter 22:19. Chu Li scoffed, "You and Li Meng are not compatible. The more you try to please her, the more she will hate you. It's useless. Master, she needs support now. Even if she hates me, I can't let her be bullied," Pang Shurji said. Chu Li sighed. "What an infatuated man." Pang Shurji said, "Master, I know I'm stupid and don't know how to make a woman like me. I'm not as good as you, but I believe my sincerity will move her." Chu Li glanced at him and shook his head. Feelings between a man and a woman had nothing to do with being moved. They needed to be moved. Just like how he and the three women had feelings that were beyond reason. There was no moving, only being moved. However, everyone had a different view of men and women. Pang Shurji was handsome, skilled in martial arts, had a good background, and had Chu Li's support. Such a person could win the hearts of countless women. However, Li Meng's background was not inferior to his, and when they were together, her martial arts surpassed his. To move Li Meng's heart, one had to be far stronger than her. Pang Shurji did not do it from the beginning, so it was almost impossible for the two of them to be together. Pang Shurji scratched his head, envious of Chu Li. Not only was his master the best in martial arts, but his women were also rare. His master's wife was already the best woman in the world. Almost no man was worthy of her, but she fell in love with his master, who was only a public house protector. Lu Yurong was also a lady of the public house. She was very calculative, and many people were afraid of her. She also fell in love with his master. Sun Mingyue was the leader of the Holy Church of Light, and many people looked up to her. If he had 10% of his master's skills, he would not be so troubled. Chu Li saw the flash of envy in his eyes and sighed. The intellectual sword can cut off your feelings. If you can cut off your feelings for Li Meng, you can become a real man, and you can stand tall. He was just saying it. In fact, he could not cut off his feelings himself. "Master, I want to, but..." Pang Shurji shook his head. Chu Li looked at him in pain and felt helpless. Even though he had peerless martial arts, there was nothing he could do about the love between a man and a woman. He couldn't force Li Meng to fall in love with Pang Shiji, could he? The younger generation had their own blessings, and as her master, he really couldn't care less. Everyone had their own fortune. Pang Shiji should have his own relationship, and hopefully, he would not fall. Alright, suit yourself. Chu Li sighed. No matter what, the higher your cultivation level is, the higher your chances will be. Instead of wasting your time visiting her, why don't you work hard on your martial arts and surpass her so that she can look up to you? Yes. Pang Shiji nodded vigorously. After giving it some thought, Chu Li decided that he would have to rely on himself to improve Pang Shiji's cultivation level. The soaring grass and the dragon tree fruit would not have much of an effect on him anymore. He had already improved what he needed to improve, and he had already laid an extremely solid foundation. It was true that Pang Shiji's aptitude was not as good as Chu Li's, so there were some divine powers that could not be passed down, such as the life and death scripture and the omniscient mirror. Chu Li could only choose those that Pang Shiji could cultivate. However, this was already enough for Pang Shiji to become a peak expert. The dragon tree fruit and the soaring grass were things that ordinary people could not even see. Even if they did, they could only eat one every 60 years, unlike Pang Shiji who could eat as much as he wanted. Right now, his cultivation base was so thick that it was rare in the world. He just needed to slowly integrate it. Also, he wasn't a heavenly deity yet. With his potential, it was very difficult for him to surpass heavenly deities. However, with his reputation, other enlightened masters would not dare to kill Pang Shiji. This time, he even brought back a few treasures for him, which made him even more powerful. Therefore, Pang Shiji could do whatever he wanted in this world. However, he was trapped by Li Meng and could not break free from his shackles. He did not know how to enjoy his time, but instead, he had to suffer the pain of being trapped by love. Master, aren't you going to help junior sister Li? Pang Shiji asked. She's really in a difficult situation now. Chu Li replied, she's an enlightened master. Enlightened masters aren't omnipotent. Those priests have contributed greatly to the Holy Church of Light, and they're all her seniors. They didn't violate the church's rules, so I can't punish them as I please, let alone attack them. Pang Shiji shook his head and sighed. They're all sly old foxes. Junior sister Li can't defeat them. Chu Li smiled. That's how her master got here. Compared to her master, her starting point is much higher, and it's much easier for her. But junior sister Li isn't cult leader Sunday. Pang Shiji couldn't help but retort. She might not have Cult Master Sun's methods, and her foundation is too shallow. Cult Master Sun ascended too quickly. Chu Li asked, what do you think? Master, you'll be overseeing the Great Light Peak for a while, Pang Shiji said. I'm sure those people will be obedient to you. What happens after that? Chu Li asked. I can't stay at the Great Light Peak forever. What happens after I leave? They know that Master will go there, so they have to restrain themselves, Pang Shiji said. Chu Li sighed. It's better to let her deal with it herself. Pang Shiji looked at him anxiously. Chu Li waved his hand. Forget it, I'll go see Li Meng and ask her herself. With her personality, she definitely wouldn't ask Master for help, Pang Shiji hurriedly said. Chu Li could not help but laugh. It's true that the eunuchs are more anxious than the emperor, Pang Shiji said embarrassedly. Seeing junior sister Li suffer is even worse than suffering myself. Chu Li said, I'll go and take a look first. You should return to Goddess Attraction Mountain and serve Honorable Master and the others well. Yes. Pang Shiji nodded. You're not allowed to leave the mountain for a year. Chu Li scoffed. Pang Shiji was instantly anxious. He was also worried about Li Meng. Many things could happen in a year. Chu Li glared at him. If you don't calm down and cultivate hard, do you think you can improve your martial arts in your current situation? Yes. Pang Shiji nodded helplessly. He thought about his determination to surpass Li Meng. Indeed, he needed to cultivate hard. Moreover, if he left temporarily, she might not be used to it and miss him. Chu Li said, "Let's go to Goddess Attraction Mountain now." Yes. Pang Shiji originally planned to go to the Great Light Peak to bid farewell to Li Meng. However, judging from Master's expression, he knew that he would not agree to it. Instead of saying it out loud and getting scolded, it was better to be tactful and not mention it. "Let's go," Chu Li said. Pang Shiji took out a silver ingot and tossed it on the table. Then, he followed Chu Li downstairs and disappeared from the main street. The next moment, they appeared at Goddess Attraction Mountain. Great Light Peak Divine Light Basilica. As the sun set in the west, the glaciers on Great Light Peak reflected the sunset glow and dyed the Divine Light Basilica rose-red. Li Meng was dressed in a snow-white robe. She wore a white veil that covered her face, revealing only a pair of bright eyes. She sat quietly behind the table and flipped through the dossiers. If it were not for the fact that she had a petite figure, Chu Li would have thought that Sun Mingwei had returned. "Masters Junior." Li Meng suddenly raised her head. Her bright eyes glowed as she excitedly approached Chu Li, bringing with her a faint fragrance. Chu Li smiled. "How have you been?" Li Meng pulled him to the table and invited him to sit down. She personally brewed a cup of tea and brought it over. "Quite well." Chu Li took the teacup and smiled. "I heard from Shiji that you're having a hard time." "It's just a small problem. I can solve it," Li Meng said. She took off her veil and revealed her beautiful face. She smiled like a flower. "Those old men are not convinced. They've been trying to make me a mere figurehead and take away my power." Chu Li said, "Don't be soft-hearted when it's time." Chapter 22:20. Chu Li asked, "Do you want me to get rid of a group of old men? Or use Zhao Dai's name?" Li Meng shook her head. "No need." Chu Li looked at her deeply. Li Meng smiled sweetly. "Masters Junior, you're underestimating me. I've secretly subdued 2 priests and made them deliberately go against me. I want to see how many people will jump out." Chu Li smiled. "You're quite like your master. You're ruthless." Li Meng scoffed. If it were Master, she would have taught them a lesson long ago. She wouldn't have gone through so much trouble. Chu Li shook his head. "I heard from your master that when she became the saint, her master went into isolated cultivation. She took charge of the Holy Church of Light on her own. The followers were not convinced. Master said that she didn't do anything. She only used her authority." Li Meng gently nodded and said, "Master once warned us not to use martial arts if we can. Only by relying on the power of the cult master can we truly maintain the sacred cult. Otherwise, if the next cult master's martial arts are not good enough, the sacred cult may very well fall apart." Chu Li smiled. "You can't be too wrong if you understand this. Mingyu continues to cultivate the Great Light Scripture in the Outland. The Great Light Scripture is mysterious and is the foundation of the Great Light surpassing state. Don't be distracted. The other martial arts can only be used as a supplement to help you understand the Great Light Scripture." "Yes." Li Meng nodded. Chu Li took out a few jade pendants and handed them to Li Meng. "These contain some Buddhist heart techniques and various insight. You can take a look. It'll help you understand the Great Light Scripture." Li Meng smiled and accepted it. Chu Li pointed at 2 of the jade pendants. "These 2 are offensive treasures. Once you crush them, you can unleash an attack that surpasses the enlightened masters. It can be used to save your life." "Yes." Li Meng nodded and picked out the 2 jade pendants. Chu Li asked, "How's Azura recently?" "They've settled down." Li Meng quickly nodded. "But it's only temporary, right?" Chu Li nodded. "I'm investigating what happened. Something might have happened to Azura." He disappeared in a flash and appeared in a ravine at the foot of the Great Light Peak. 4 middle-aged men were fishing by a pool in the ravine. They looked relaxed and calm. With a flick of Chu Li's sleeve, the 4 middle-aged men fell to the ground without a sound. Their acupuncture points were sealed. The next moment, Chu Li pulled the 2 of them and appeared in the Divine Light Basilica. Li Meng looked at the 2 middle-aged men in surprise. She frowned and asked, Azura? The great light scripture that she cultivated was exceptionally sensitive to Azuras. Although these 2 middle-aged men did not seem like other Azuras, she could sense them the moment they approached and knew that they were Azuras. It's a great Azura, Chu Li replied. He's currently in a ravine beneath the Great Light Peak. These people just won't give up and want to destroy the Holy Church of Light. Li Meng scoffed. Should we kill them? Chu Li said, if you run into them, the most important thing is to be careful not to commit suicide. But you have to ask them what exactly happened. Li Meng nodded. Chu Li slapped a middle-aged man awake. As the man slowly opened his eyes, Chu Li asked, what happened in the Azura boundary? Who are you? The middle-aged man asked in a hoarse voice. Chu Li. Impossible. Chu Li is in the Grandmaster's boundary. Of course I can come down. Tell me, what exactly happened that made you Azuras so crazy? Chu Li said calmly. Don't tell me you don't know. As a great Azura, you should at least know. It's nothing. The middle-aged man shook his head. Chu Li could now see through the great Azura's mind. He frowned and suddenly slammed his palm down. Bang! The red mist flickered and an Azura's heart appeared before disappearing. It was as if the middle-aged man had never appeared and everything was just an illusion. Masters Jr., what exactly happened? Li Meng could tell that Chu Li already knew the outcome. Chu Li frowned and sighed. The Azura deity king is dead. The new deity king hasn't been elected yet. Azura deity king? Li Meng frowned. Is it the same as the Divine Church of Azura at Moonfall Peak? It's different. Chu Li shook his head. Although Azuras like to fight alone, they are very obedient and have a strict hierarchy. They have never disobeyed the Azura deity king, so they can gather together. Without the Azura deity king, the Azuras can no longer form an army. They can act on their own and no one can control them. Isn't this a good opportunity? Li Meng said. We can take this opportunity to kill the Azuras and weaken their strength. Although Azuras were immortal, it would take some time for them to recover their strength. Moreover, it was not something that could be recovered in a short period of time. As long as they kept killing Azuras, they could weaken the Azura boundary's strength. Even if they could not eliminate them, they would no longer be a threat. Chu Li said, the Azura deity king's emergence should be based on military merits and cultivation level. That's why these Azuras and great Azuras crazily rush to the extraterritorial battlefield to accumulate merits and become deity kings. Li Meng knew about the extraterritorial battlefield. She frowned. Is that why they don't care about this place and are busy dealing with the Celestials? That's right. Chu Li nodded. They wanted to kill the Celestials and gain merit. This was also an opportunity for the Celestials. Azuras usually fought alone. They were the easiest to deal with but also the most dangerous. This was because great Azuras who usually did not come out would also come out to kill the Celestials and gain merits. In particular, the Celestials with profound cultivation levels were the targets of these great Azuras. He patted another middle-aged man and calmly asked, Why do you want to rely on the Azuras? What? The middle-aged man was stunned. His expression changed. I don't understand. Chu Li said, You don't have to pretend. Who are you? He turned to look at Li Meng. Li Meng frowned and sized him up. Song Chaohui? She remembered the names of all the disciples of the Holy Church of Light. As she cultivated, she gradually gained a photographic memory. The middle-aged man's expression turned serious. Yes, I am. When he saw Li Meng, he immediately stood up to greet her. Not only did he not feel honored that the bishop remembered his name, but he was also frightened. Li Meng waved her hand and looked at Chu Li. Chu Li said, Song Qiaohui. Why did you rely on the Asuras? I'm innocent, Song Qiaohui shouted. Chu Li said, looks like you're not going to tell me. Who else besides you? I'm really innocent, Song Qiaohui quickly said. I didn't rely on the Asuras. How could I do that? Chu Li sighed. I heard that after cultivating the Asura power technique, one can transform into an Asura and become immortal. Is that true? There's such a thing. Song Qiaohui was shocked. Chu Li said, to tell you the truth, it's a lie. Cultivating the Asura power technique doesn't make one human. If that's the case, the Asuras would have dominated the world long ago. Why would they need to fight? They could just pass the Asura power technique to the world, and everyone would become Asuras. Song Qiaohui quickly nodded. Chapter 22-21. Li Meng's expression darkened as she stared coldly at Song Qiaohui. Song Qiaohui panicked and quickly said, Bishop, I'm really innocent. What do you mean innocent? Tell me. Li Meng said. Bishop, I didn't surrender to Asura. Song Qiaohui quickly said, I was only captured by them and forced to bring them into Great Light Peak. I've been delaying my actions. Why did they want to enter Great Light Peak? You should know, right? Li Meng asked. They seem to want to talk to you, Bishop. Song Qiaohui nodded. I don't think they're plotting anything. They might really have something to talk to you about, but they wouldn't dare to bring them in without your permission. They were looking for an opportunity to send a letter and were leading them in circles when... He glanced at Chu Li and felt a chill run down his spine. Before he could see what was going on, his vision turned black and his acupuncture point was sealed. When he opened his eyes again, he was already here. This guy's martial arts was beyond imagination and shocking. You should have sent a message long ago if you wanted to, Li Meng said. Don't tell me they're smart enough to know how to guard against you. I didn't want to mess things up, so I didn't act rashly, Song Qiaohui said. It's better to be safe and find a chance to escape to the mountain. What else? Li Meng said. What else is there to say? Say it all in one go. May I know who this young master is? Song Qiaohui looked at Chu Li. Li Meng said, This is my master's junior. Head Chief Chu? Song Qiaohui quickly said. Li Meng scoffed. At least he's not that stupid. Chu Li smiled. He's not stupid, he's just too smart and greedy. He wants to be immortal and indestructible. You're a grandmaster too, you should know that you can ascend to the grandmaster's boundary after death. Yes, yes. Song Qiaohui smiled. Of course I know that we can enter Great Light Surpassing State after death. Chu Li said, I might as well tell you that Sun Mingyue is the future Great Light Surpassing State. It's independent in the Grandmaster's boundary and has great influence. It's not inferior to the Holy Church of Light. You're being silly. Head Chief Chu, I'm really innocent. Song Qiaohui said sincerely. I believe that Head Chief Chu is very perceptive and will definitely be able to find out the truth. Chu Li nodded. I know. You have indeed sought refuge with Asura because your Asura power technique's boundary is not low. Li Meng was surprised and frowned slightly. If she had cultivated the Asura power technique, she should have sensed it. However, she did not, so she was still a little skeptical. Even if Chu Li's judgment was not wrong, she still had some doubts. Chu Li said, logically speaking, the martial arts of the Holy Church of Light and the Asura power technique cannot coexist, but you're an exception. You're considered a genius with extraordinary talents, but it's a pity that you didn't use it on the right path. Song Qiaohui panicked even more. He felt that Chu Li's calm gaze seemed to be able to see through his internal organs. Even his inner thoughts were clearly seen through. At first, he thought that he could cultivate the Asura power technique without anyone noticing, but he never expected Chu Li to see through it with just a glance. No matter how shrewd he was, He could not help but be shaken. Chu Li sighed. Now there's a way out. You can take it. What way? Song Chaohui quickly asked. Chu Li looked at Li Meng. Li Meng frowned. Masters Jr., you want him to be a spy? Chu Li slowly nodded. It's rare for someone to be bribed by Azura. Azura has very high standards. They don't really care about ordinary people. It's obvious that Azura can see through his aptitude. Can he succeed? Li Meng frowned. Chu Li said, I have to try. All right, I'll listen to Masters Jr. Li Meng nodded lightly and looked at Song Chaohui. According to the law, you should be beheaded and die without a doubt. However, this time, I'll allow you to carry out your crimes and perform meritorious deeds. Do you agree? Yes. Song Chaohui nodded vigorously. Thank you, Bishop. Thank you, Head Chief Chu. He feared and hated Chu Li. If Chu Li had not appeared, he would not have been able to see through his background. However, if it was not for him, he would have died once he was discovered. Now there was only one way out. Chu Li said, You can tell them what Azura is trying to find out, but you have to tell the Holy Church of Light about these things. If there's a chance to go to the Azura realm, it'll be for the best. It'll be a great merit, and you might even be able to become a priest. This. Song Chaohui hesitated. He felt that he was in a difficult position. If he were to leak information about the Holy Church of Light, the consequences would be unpredictable. If it really caused a great disaster, they would still come to him for revenge. Even if they did not say it openly, they would still come to him secretly. Li Meng saw through his worries and scoffed. All right, just do as Masters Jr. says. I won't blame you if anything happens. Song Chaohui quickly nodded. Yes. Chu Li said, the most important thing is still the Azura realm. If you can enter it, your merit will be amazing. Also, you have to remember some of the news that Azura casually spills and pass it to me. Who knows, one of them might be a great merit. Yes. Song Chaohui nodded. Chu Li said, as for the Azura power technique, you don't have to worry about it. If it's not perfected, it'll be useless. Also, as long as you master the heart technique of the Holy Church of Light, you'll be able to expel the Azura power technique. Song Chaohui finally sighed in relief. He was worried that if he continued to cultivate the Azura power technique, he would go further and further. Even if he made a great merit, he would not be accepted by the Holy Church of Light again. He would become a true anomaly and a traitor in everyone's eyes. Chu Li waved his hand. Go. Li Meng scoffed. They'll still look for you. Tell me the truth, don't act smart. Azura is smarter than you think. Yes, Bishop. Song Chaohui gave a fist salute and slowly left. Chu Li stared at his silhouette, deep in thought. Li Meng asked, Masters Jr., will it really work? It depends on his performance. Chu Li said. If Song Chaohui had other ideas and completely joined the Azura realm, that would be the best. He could just kill Song Chaohui and disguise himself as him to enter the Azura realm to gather information. It would save him the trouble. If Song Chaohui did not join the Azura realm, he could also bring news to the Holy Church of Light and understand the Azura realm better. His understanding of the Azura realm was very shallow now, so he needed more information. It seemed like the Azura disaster in the lower realm had been resolved, but who knew if the next Azura deity king would continue to kill people in the lower realm to accumulate inauspicious energy to improve the Azura power technique. The birth of an Azura deity king required a lot of merit, so it was easy to imagine that after this, the Azura realm's strength would be greatly reduced. If they wanted to improve quickly, they would need enough inauspicious energy to improve the Azura power technique. In that case, the lower realm would become the best place for Azura to cultivate. When he thought about this, his expression became serious. Masters Jr., is it bad? Li Meng asked. Chu Li sighed. It's not good. Once the Azura deity king is born, there will be another storm. You have to be prepared. Li Meng said, It's just killing Asuras, it's nothing. Chu Li shook his head. I'm afraid it'll be much stronger than before. Quickly improve the church's strength, don't cause any more internal strife. Chapter 22:22. Chu Li said, once an Asura deity king is born, the lower realm may be safe and sound, but the biggest possibility is that more Asuras will come over. The Holy Church of Light and the Tempest Temple will be the first to bear the brunt of the attack. Masters Jr., don't worry. We're not that easy to deal with, Li Meng said. Chu Li smiled. You're not easy to deal with, but I'm most afraid of great Asuras dealing with enlightened masters. Asuras deal with normal masters and carry out a strategy of extermination. They want to destroy the lower realm. Will the Grandmasters just watch? Li Meng asked. Chu Li said, the Grandmasters might not be able to handle it. They might have to deal with the Asuras at the same time. Of course, they want the lower realm to share the burden and reduce their pressure. Li Meng pursed her red lips. Chu Li sighed. Your master and I will work hard and strive to have a say in the Grandmasters. If that doesn't work, I'll come back to deal with the Asuras. Li Meng smiled. Masters Jr. is here. What's there to be afraid of? Chu Li smiled and shook his head. No matter how strong he was only one person. It was impossible to stop all the Asuras. It seemed like he had to work harder on his cultivation and strive to stop the Asura disaster. Or he could think of a way to make the Asura realm restless. With a thought, he looked at the main hall thoughtfully. Li Meng knew he was deep in thought. She did not disturb him. After a while, Chu Li suddenly disappeared and reappeared in the valley. He killed 2 great Asuras. With his current cultivation level, one move was enough to subdue an ordinary great Asura. There were strong and weak great Asuras. It would take some effort to meet a stronger one. However, he felt that there were not many great Asuras that could defeat him. He could run freely in the foreign battlefield. After the 2 great Asuras died, the 2 hearts of Asura flashed. Chu Li imprinted their patterns into his mind and continued to derive them with the heavenly star insight. However, he had almost given up. The heavenly star insight had been improving, but there was no progress in deriving the patterns on the hearts of Asura. It was as if he wanted to swallow the sky. He guessed that it would be useless no matter how much he improved the heavenly star insight. When Chu Li reappeared, Li Meng quickly asked, Masters Jr., are you going back to the Grandmasters? Chu Li nodded. Don't you want to stay for a few days? Li Meng said, I still want martial uncle to teach me martial arts. Chu Li thought for a moment. I'll stay here for a day then. Li Meng was overjoyed. Right now there was no one who could guide her in her cultivation. Moreover, as an enlightened master, her progress would be slow as she needed to have a good comprehension ability. As long as she had a deeper understanding of the Great Light Scripture, her cultivation level would improve a little. Other than that, the usual accumulation was almost useless to an enlightened master, so there was no progress at all. Therefore, guidance on cultivation was especially important. Chu Li stayed at the Great Light Peak for a day, and gave Li Meng a few words of advice so that she could advance a level. After that, he returned to the beyond heavenly realm. The moment he appeared, he was prepared to receive the revenge of the heaven-shaking tower. However, he did not see the disciples of the heaven-shaking tower appear. He first transformed into Wu Yuanxi and appeared in the city of 10,000 swords. Soon, he saw a solemn atmosphere in the city of 10,000 swords. People were hurrying to and fro, as if something important was about to happen. Chu Li scanned the area but did not see Zhu Lungying. Could it be that he had been discovered and had fled the city of 10,000 swords? He quickly found an unnamed disciple and inquired about what had happened. Young Wu, you still don't know? This unnamed disciple, Kai Hua, had an average appearance, but his aptitude was not bad. Moreover, he was quick-witted and quick-witted. He was extremely sensitive to news and could find out anything. Chu Li shook his head. Senior brother Kai, what happened? The two of them were in a restaurant. Chu Li raised his hand and ordered 2 dishes and a jar of good wine. He was all ears. Ahem. Kai Hua coughed softly and said solemnly, the disciples in the city are very excited now. They're going to the foreign battlefield. Chu Li frowned. Isn't it not time yet? Other than the 9 divisions, the other sects could not go to the foreign battlefield as they pleased. It was not yet time for sects other than the 9 divisions to go to the foreign battlefield. Why did they suddenly break the rules? He thought about the Asura's abnormal behavior. It seemed that the Elders Guild of Beyond Heaven knew what was going on and wanted to take the opportunity to weaken the Asura. That said, opening up the Outworld battleground to the sect disciples would give Asuras more opportunities to practice and kill more Devas, which would make their Asura power art even stronger. That way, the weaker Asuras would be wiped out, and the stronger ones would grow even stronger. It was hard to say if this was the right or wrong way to do it. Chu Li asked, so all the official disciples in the inner city have to go? Of course. Kai Hua nodded. Looking at the dishes that the waiter served, he quickly opened the jar of wine and filled 2 silver cups. He drank the silver cups and exclaimed, good wine. Chu Li also finished his drink in 1 gulp. He raised the jar and filled 2 silver cups. Isn't this too risky? Fortune comes from danger. Kai Hua laughed. Young Wu, if you don't have the courage, why do you practice martial arts? Chu Li frowned. The foreign battlefield is full of Asura and heavenly demons. It's not a joke. The merit of killing Asura is great. As long as you can survive, you can make a name for yourself, Kai Hua said. If I'm an official disciple, I won't give up this opportunity either. Sharpening oneself in a life or death situation, one's cultivation level will improve faster. It's even possible for one to become a superior person. Chu Li sighed and shook his head. I don't have the courage to do that. Then you can only swallow your anger obediently. Kai Hua shook his head disapprovingly. As martial arts practitioners, don't we seek to be proud? Living like a coward is a waste. Chu Li nodded and did not refute. Everyone had their own way of living. Kai Hua's way of living was in line with most people's thoughts. That was why people in the martial arts world would draw their swords at each other if they did not agree. There were many cases where they would fight to the death. Bystanders would find it strange and boring. Young Wu, we don't have the chance to enter the foreign battlefield. Just endure for 10 years. Kai Hua shook his head and sighed. He drank even more, obviously depressed. Chu Li persuaded him to drink 2 more glasses and then left. He first went to the city of 10,000 Swords inner city to apply for a leave, saying that his injuries had relapsed and he needed to rest for a month before returning to Drizzle City. As soon as he entered his courtyard in Drizzle City, when Yi came over, he was still dressed in green, looking elegant and upright. He pushed the door open and fist saluted. Brother Chu, let's go. Lady Xiao wants to see you. Chu Li nodded and followed him outside. Soon, they arrived at Xue Luoyu's residence and entered the backyard. Xue Luoyu was holding onto the railing and standing in the gazebo on the lake, overlooking the fish in the lake. A gust of wind blew, gently ruffling her yellow robe. Chu Li went forward and fist saluted. Lady Xiao. Xue Luoyu turned her head and looked at him, her slender eyes shining. Chu Li, I'm going to the foreign battlefield. Chu Li nodded. It was not surprising that she would go to the foreign battlefield at this time. I'm bringing a few people, Xue Luoyu said. Come with me. All right, Chu Li agreed without hesitation. Then we'll depart tomorrow, Xue Luoyu said. You, Wen-Yi, Elder Sun Huayu, and Elder Xielinshin. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.